The first box had my name on it. Dad, Celia's, written in my daughter's blocky black handwriting. The second box said Nate, Garage Tools. I stood in the hallway holding a wooden spoon, with onion gravy dripping onto the floor between my shoes. Behind me, the pot roast was low in the oven. In front of me, my son and daughter had gone silent in the dining room. They had been whispering a moment earlier. "The movers can take his bedroom first," Celia had said. Then Nate, "Is he bringing the workbench? Because I need that corner cleared. Not if, when. Not would Dad agree. Could Dad manage? How should we ask him? My move had a date, a destination, and apparently a workbench policy. The only thing it didn't have was my participation. Celia stepped into the hallway. Her eyes dropped from my face to the boxes, then followed the gravy all the way down to the hardwood. "Dad," she said. That was all. I looked at Nate. He had a tape measure clipped to his belt. "Were you measuring my garage before dinner?" I asked. "Or were you going to wait until after dessert?" 10 minutes earlier, the biggest problem in my kitchen had been a carrot. It rolled off the cutting board, bounced off a cabinet, and stopped under the refrigerator. I left it there. At 68, you learn which battles require immediate courage and which can wait until you own a longer broom. Sunday dinner was pot roast, which wasn't adventurous but had the advantage of making the whole house smell like somebody was taking care of it. I had browned the meat, chopped the onions, and put too many carrots around it even before one deserted. I always cooked too much. "You could feed the Pittsburgh Steelers," Celia liked to say. "The Steelers have suffered enough," I always told her. We had been making versions of the same jokes for years. That was part of Sunday dinner. I cooked the same 6 meals, Nate arrived with the same bottle of grocery store Cabernet, and Celia complained about the same chair wobbling, even though it only wobbled because she leaned back in it. My divorce from their mother had been final for 12 years. Joanne lived outside Columbus now and sent me a friendly text on my birthday, usually around lunchtime, as if she had remembered me while looking for a coupon. We were not enemies. We had simply reached the point where every conversation felt like washing a dish the other person had dirtied. After she left, Sundays got long. The first few months I ate standing at the counter because sitting alone at the table made the room feel accusatory. Then one Sunday, Nate stopped by to return a drill. Celia came over because she heard Nate was there and assumed correctly that anything involving him and a borrowed tool required supervision. I made spaghetti. The next week they came back. 12 years later, Sunday dinner was treated like weather. People complained about it, planned around it, and seemed to believe it would continue whether or not anybody appreciated the person producing it. That particular Sunday, Celia arrived first. She was 40, 5'4", and capable of turning a request for mustard into a regional supply operation. She came through the back door carrying a canvas grocery bag and talking before she saw me. "I brought the low-sodium broth, batteries for your smoke detector, and those freezer labels I told you about. I have salt, fire, and a pen. You have the wrong kind of batteries. The smoke detector's been satisfied with them since 2019. That's not the reassurance you think it is." She set the bag down and kissed my cheek. Her dark hair was pulled into a knot that looked painful. Celia wore reading glasses on a chain now, though she claimed the chain was temporary. It had been temporary for 11 months. "Where's Priya?" I asked, finishing a client presentation. "On Sunday?" "Some people have jobs. I had a job for 46 years. You've been retired for 3. That doesn't erase the first 46. She opened my refrigerator and began moving things. Celia did not look in a refrigerator. She conducted an inspection. "Why do you have 3 jars of mustard?" "Preparedness. This one expired in March." "Mustard doesn't expire. It becomes distinguished." She held the jar up to the light. I watched her throw it away. That irritated me more than it should have. I considered taking it out of the trash after she left. Not because I wanted the mustard, but because I disliked a world where a person could enter another man's kitchen and execute a condiment without trial. Then she reached up and pressed the test button on the smoke detector. The alarm shrieked. I flinched hard enough to bang my hip on the counter. "Works," she said. "Excellent. Now test the carbon monoxide detector by backing your car into the kitchen." She laughed, but her eyes stayed on me a second longer than the joke required. "You okay? I'm being attacked by household safety equipment. You grab the counter." I bumped my hip. "Which hip?" "The private one." She gave me the look she had inherited from Joanne, the one that suggested men were appliances with known manufacturing defects. Then she let it go. Or I thought she did. Nate came in 20 minutes late without knocking. He was 43 and still had the loose, handsome face that made strangers trust him before he had earned it. He wore a blue work shirt with the sleeves rolled up, though it was cool outside, and carried a bottle of Cabernet. "Peace offering," he announced. "You're not late enough to require peace talks," I said. "Traffic. You live 11 minutes away." There was local traffic. Celia looked out the window. Did the local traffic also make you park in the driveway crooked? That was a creative choice. He hugged me with one arm and set the wine on the counter. There were shadows under his eyes, and the skin around his mouth looked gray. "Where's Laurel?" I asked. "Headache." "Again?" He went to the drawer where I kept the corkscrew. Apparently I inspire them. It was a joke, but he didn't smile afterward. Laurel had missed the previous Sunday too. She and Nate had been married 17 years, which was long enough for both of them to develop a polished public explanation for the other person's absence. Work deadline, headache, helping her sister, early morning. Once the explanation had been a broken garbage disposal, which struck me as especially weak because I had installed that disposal myself. I wanted to ask Nate if things were all right. Instead, I said, "Don't open that. I've got beer. It's wine. I know what it is. Your sister drinks half a glass, you drink 2, and I spend the next week cooking with the rest. Wine is good for the heart. So is walking, and walking doesn't make beef stew taste like a candle store." He opened it anyway. That was how we talked in my family. We circled whatever hurt and poked the harmless things in the middle. Celia carried plates to the dining room. Nate followed with the silverware, which should have warned me. Nate did not help before being asked. If a man changes personality in your house, pay attention to what he may have broken. I stayed in the kitchen making gravy. The exhaust fan was running because Celia had complained about the steam. Their voices traveled down the short hall in pieces. "12th is better," Celia said. Nate answered too quietly for me to catch it. Then Celia said, "Priya already moved the shelves. We can do the dresser that weekend." I assumed they were talking about something at her house. Priya was always reorganizing their basement studio, and Celia was always reorganizing Priya's reorganization. I whisked flour into the onions. "The movers can take his bedroom first," Celia said. "That way he has his things that night." My hand stopped. There are sentences the body understands before the mind agrees to hear them. I stared into the pan while the flour clumped around the whisk. Nate said, "Is he bringing the workbench? Because I need that corner cleared." Celia lowered her voice. "We haven't gone through the garage yet. I'm not throwing it out. I just need to know. He's going to be upset if you start claiming things." "I'm not claiming things. You put your name on the toolboxes, so nobody puts them on the truck." I turned off the burner. The spoon in my hand was wet with gravy because I had set it in the pan without noticing. I walked toward the dining room slowly, not out of wisdom or self-control, but because the floor felt unreliable. That was when I saw the boxes. They were flattened and leaning beside the stairs, partly hidden behind the coat rack. Celia must have brought them through the front door while I was trimming the roast. 6 or 7 of them, with packing tape and a roll of bubble wrap tucked under the twine. Dad, Celia's, Nate, garage tools. Another said, "Kitchen, donate," but I couldn't see the rest. My kitchen, my garage, my bedroom, my name, written like a destination. Celia came into the hall first. Nate stood behind her with one hand on the back of a dining chair. The tape measure on his belt had a bright yellow case. I remembered giving it to him when he bought his first house. "Were you measuring my garage before dinner?" I asked. "Or were you going to wait until after dessert?" Nate touched the tape measure as if he had forgotten it was there. "It's not what it looks like," he said. "No? Because it looks organized." "Dad," Celia began, "we were going to talk to you tonight. After you labeled the boxes, they're just boxes. Those are the most confident boxes I've ever met." Nate made a small sound that might have been a laugh if Celia hadn't looked at him. She stepped toward me. "Please turn the burner off." I did. The oven, the roast is still in it. You're dripping gravy. I looked down at the spoon. A brown drop landed beside the first one. There are people who shout when they are blindsided. My father did. He could turn a room into a place where everyone held their breath. I had spent most of my adult life trying not to be him. So I walked back to the kitchen. Behind me, Nate said, "Dad, can we just explain? The roast has 40 minutes. What does that mean?" "It means if you explain now, the potatoes will get cold." I rinsed the spoon and wiped the hallway floor with a dish towel. Celia crouched to help, but I took the towel out of her hand. Sit down, I said. Dad, you planned where I'm going to sleep. Surely you can manage where to sit. For once, she did not answer. I put the gravy back on low heat. My hands were steady until I reached for the pepper. Then the glass shaker clicked against the stove twice. From the dining room came the murmur of an argument. You said he knew, Celia whispered. I said he knew we'd have to do something eventually. That is not the same thing. You're the one who booked the movers. You're the one taking the house. Silence followed. I stood over the gravy and listened to the words taking the shape of my future. The basement at Celia's, my house for Nate, the 12th, as if Sunday dinner had been a meeting scheduled to approve decisions already made. I opened the oven, heat rolled over my face. The roast sat exactly where I had left it, surrounded by carrots, potatoes, and onions, all of them obediently moving toward the ending I had chosen for them. I basted the meat, shut the door, and set the timer for 35 minutes. Then I took 3 plates out of the cabinet, not 4. Laurel wasn't coming, not 5. Priya was working. 3 plates for the 3 people who had spent years pretending that needing one another was the same as knowing one another. Behind me, Celia appeared in the doorway. Dad, she said quietly, we really are trying to help. I set the first plate on the counter. Then tell me something. What? I looked at my daughter, then past her at my son. When exactly did I ask you to? Celia's mouth tightened. You didn't, she said. Nate rubbed one hand over his face. That's not fair. I looked at him. I asked a question. You didn't ask us to help because you don't ask. You mentioned things. Things like what? The stairs, the yard, the furnace making that noise. The furnace was making a noise. And what did you expect me to do when you told me? I expected you to agree it was annoying. You called me 3 times about it. It stopped twice. Celia folded her arms. This is what we're talking about. Apparently we were talking now. The roast still had 33 minutes, but my children had decided to use them efficiently. I turned the gravy down another notch. Go ahead then. Celia glanced toward the dining room. No, I said. You started this in my kitchen. Finish it here. Nate leaned against the refrigerator. I dislike people leaning on my refrigerator. It had shelves inside the door, and shelves were not designed to support a 43-year-old man avoiding eye contact. Celia took off her glasses, though she hadn't been wearing them on her face. She cleaned one lens with the hem of her blouse. The house is too much for you, she said. The house hasn't complained. The front step is cracked. Concrete does that. The upstairs bathroom faucet leaks. It drips. That's what leaking is. 1 drip every 20 minutes is not a leak. It's a clock. Nate smiled despite himself. Celia turned on him. Please don't. What? Make this funny. I'm not. You always do that, and then I'm the one standing here sounding like everybody's supervisor. Nate straightened away from the refrigerator. I should have noticed then that the argument was not just with me. They had rehearsed this together, but they had not agreed on the reason. Celia's reasons had bullet points. Nate's had square footage. She put her glasses back on the chain. You missed your dentist appointment, she said. I rescheduled it. After they called me. I gave them your number years ago. You gave everyone my number years ago. That was practical, for you. The words came out sharper than the ones before them. She looked surprised to hear them in her own voice. I opened a drawer and took out the carving knife, then realized I had no need for it yet. I set it on the counter. Celia watched the blade touch the wood. You left your car at the grocery store in January. The battery died. You called me because you thought you'd lost it. For 5 minutes. You walked around the parking lot for 20. That parking lot has poor organization. Nate looked at the floor. I pointed at him. You've lost your car. Not recently. You called me from a concert once and said somebody stole it. I was in a different garage. You were 36. That doesn't help your argument, Dad. He was right, which irritated me. Celia continued before I could redirect the embarrassment. You nearly fell on the ice last winter. I slipped. You grabbed the railing. That is the purpose of a railing. You called me afterward. I didn't call you because I slipped. I called you because the city plow put snow across the driveway. And what did you expect me to do? Agree it was annoying. There it is again. She gave a short laugh with no pleasure in it. You tell me there's a problem, then act surprised when I try to solve it. You send me pictures of pill bottles and ask if the labels look different. You leave insurance forms on the dining room table and say computers don't like you. You mention that the upstairs feels colder. You say the yard is getting away from you. Then, the second I suggest anything, You act like I'm trying to put you in a facility. You're trying to put me in your basement. It's not a basement like that. There are basements with reputations. It's finished. So, was this plan? Nate exhaled loudly. Can we stop doing one-liners for a minute? I looked at him. You may be more comfortable with Celia's slideshow. There is no slideshow, Celia said. Nate and I both looked at her. She lifted her chin. Priya said a slideshow would be condescending. That silenced the room. A bubble rose in the gravy and burst. There was almost a slideshow, I said. It had information. Did it have pictures of my new cell? Dad. Were there amenities? It's a bedroom, a full bathroom, and the downstairs sitting room. You'd have more space than you use here. Would I be allowed upstairs? She stared at me. The timer showed 27 minutes. I had the strange thought that if I could keep them talking until it rang, the whole thing might become ordinary again. I would carve the roast. Celia would correct the angle of my knife. Nate would eat too fast. We would discuss a television show none of us had watched. The boxes would somehow turn back into cardboard. Then Nate said, "Nobody's taking anything from you." I looked toward the hallway. He followed my eyes to the box with his name on it. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? You'd still have your stuff. The stuff you don't put your name on? Those are just tools. They're my tools. I know that. Do you? His face changed. The easy charm went first. Underneath it was a tired man who had not slept well and did not want to explain why. I thought you wanted me to have them eventually, he said. Eventually is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Jesus, Dad, I'm not waiting for you to die. Good to know. That's not what this is. Then what is it? He looked at Celia. She looked back at him, but there was no rescue in her face. Nate shoved his hands into his pockets. Laurel and I need some room. The house has rooms, I said. You mean you and Laurel need room from each other? His eyes lifted to mine. There it was. Not confirmation exactly. More like the exhaustion of a man who had run out of places to hide a fact. Celia moved toward him. You don't have to. No, apparently tonight is when everybody gets honest. Nate. What? You want to read him the rest of the list first? It's not a list. You have it on your phone. She reached for the phone on the counter before he could. That small movement told me more than either of them had. You made a list about me? It's notes. Of what? Things we needed to discuss. You labeled my mistakes. I wrote down concerns because whenever I bring up one thing, you make a joke and change the subject. The anger I had been holding at a distance moved closer. How long? Dad, how long have you been keeping notes? A few months. Nate laughed under his breath. Celia spun toward him. You sent me half of them. I told you things. I didn't know you were building a case. You wanted the house. I needed a place. You said this worked for everybody. It does. For you. For him too. Look around. He can't stay here forever. The words landed differently because Nate said them. Celia spoke like a person trying to prevent a fall. Nate spoke like someone waiting for a chair to become empty. I looked around because he had told me to. The kitchen cabinets were the same maple cabinets Joanne and I had chosen when Celia was in college. One hinge had loosened near the sink. I had tightened it that morning. The wallpaper above the breakfast nook had curled at one seam. The refrigerator hummed. On top of it sat a ceramic rooster Celia had made in a pottery class when she was 26, though she denied it every time Priya admired it. It was not a museum. It was not a ruin. It was my house. You're right, I said. I can't stay here forever. Nate's shoulders lowered. But I can stay here past the 12th. His shoulders went back up. Celia picked up her phone. Nobody said the date was absolute. You booked movers. I put down a refundable deposit. With whose money? Mine. Then get yours back. We can change the date. I'm not negotiating the date. The timer had 21 minutes left. Nate walked into the dining room, then returned with his wine glass. He took a drink standing in the doorway. We were trying to avoid this, he said. This being me, this reaction. You planned my move without asking because you were afraid I'd object to moving? When you say it like that, how do you say it? He set the glass down too hard. Wine jumped over the rim and spotted my counter. We say you've been alone in a 4-bedroom house for 12 years, and every year there's more you don't get around to. We say Celia worries herself sick every time you don't answer the phone. We say you keep telling me there'll always be a place for me here. We say you'd be better off with people around. With people around, I repeated, At Celia's. While you live here, temporarily, of course. He heard the judgment in it. You don't know what's happening with Laurel. No, I know she's had 3 Sunday headaches in a month. His face went red. Maybe she doesn't like coming here. The kitchen seemed to contract around us. Celia said his name softly. He looked immediately sorry, which did not remove the words. I reached for a towel and wiped the spilled wine. Doesn't she? She doesn't like the way we do things. What way is that? Like this. He gestured at the counter, the oven, the 3 plates waiting to be carried in. Dinner? Every Sunday, no matter what. Same time, same questions. If we miss it, you say it's fine in that voice that means we ruined your week. I don't have a voice. Celia and Nate looked at each other. Apparently I have a voice, I said. You make it feel mandatory, Nate said. You don't mean to, but you do. I've never forced anybody to come here. No, you just make enough food for people who told you they weren't coming. Then you call Monday and mention all the leftovers. Food has to be eaten. It's not about the food. That offended me on behalf of the roast. Celia sat at the breakfast table. Some of the fight had gone out of her. She touched the edge of a paper napkin with one finger. Priya doesn't want you in the basement, she said. Nate stared at her. What? She said we should ask first. She said I was creating a solution to a conversation nobody had agreed to have. Priya says things like that because she bills by the hour, I said. Celia almost smiled. Almost. I told her you'd never agree, she said. Not until something happened. A fall, or the furnace went out in January, or you got sick and didn't tell us. I thought if we had everything arranged, you'd see it could work. You thought I'd be cornered. I thought you'd feel cared for. Those are not the same feeling. I know that now. Her voice cracked on the last word, just enough to make me wish I hadn't heard it. Celia could be controlling, invasive, and impossible to distract once she discovered a loose thread. She was also the person who sat with me for 9 hours when I had my shoulder repaired, even after I insisted she go home. She had stocked my freezer, written out my medication times, and called every morning until I could button my own shirt. I had appreciated it. I had also let her, maybe longer than necessary. The oven timer rang. All 3 of us jumped. I took the roast out. The potatoes were done. The carrots had browned along the edges exactly the way Nate liked them. The meat rested under foil while I carried the plates into the dining room. The flattened boxes remained beside the stairs. Celia reached for one. Leave them, I said. At least let me put them in the car. I want to look at them while we eat. Nobody argued. We sat at the table. I carved the roast. My hands had stopped shaking, though I could feel my pulse in the thumb holding the fork. Nate passed his plate without speaking. Celia took 1 potato and 2 carrots. Usually she took 3 carrots and complained I'd made too many. I poured gravy over my meat, then set the boat in the center of the table. Before either of them could start another explanation, I held out my hand. Keys. Nate frowned. What? The keys to my house. Celia went still. You both have copies, I said. Put them on the table. Neither of them moved. I picked up my fork. You were comfortable deciding where I'd live, I said. You can start by remembering where you don't. Celia reached into her purse first. She carried enough keys to open a small municipal building. They hung from 2 metal rings, along with a pharmacy tag, a brass letter P, and a tiny rubber flashlight that clicked on when she squeezed it. She found mine by touch. It was the plain silver key with a strip of blue tape around the neck. You gave me this, she said. I remember. For emergencies. I remember that too. What if there is one? I'll call. What if you can't? Then a key in your purse won't know. Her thumb stayed pressed against the blue tape. Nate pushed food around his plate. This is dramatic. You put your name on my workbench. I put my name on a box. That defense needs more work. I have a key because you asked me to have one. You locked yourself out twice. Once, garage door during the storm. I climbed through the window. You were 66 years old climbing through a bathroom window. It was the first floor bathroom. That's not better. I didn't break anything. You tore your pants. I had other pants. Celia pulled the key free and placed it beside the gravy boat. It made a small, clean sound against the table. Nate looked at it, then at me. You really want mine? I have enjoyed all the other parts of this conversation so much, I thought I'd add ambiguity. He took his keyring from his pocket. His had a bottle opener, 2 car keys, and a plastic tag from a gym I doubted he still attended. He worked my key loose with his thumbnail. "You know what?" he said. "Fine." The key hit the table harder than Celia's. The gravy trembled in its boat. Nate picked up his fork again. "You can stop looking at me like I tried to steal your identity. I'm looking at you like you plan to move into my house. You told me there would always be room. There is a difference between room and ownership." "I never said ownership." "You measured the garage." "Because Celia asked me to figure out what would fit." Celia looked up. "That's not what I asked. You said we needed a plan. I said we needed to know what Dad would take. Apparently nothing. Because he's not going." "I never said nothing. You said the downstairs sitting room would hold most of it. Most of his furniture. Which means the rest stays here." They had forgotten me again. Not completely. They glanced my way between accusations, checking whether a phrase had done damage. But the argument had acquired its own current. Celia wanted to prove the plan was care. Nate wanted to prove it had been practical. Neither wanted to admit they had each heard a different promise in the same conversation. I cut a piece of roast. It was tender enough to pull apart with the side of my fork. I hated that dinner had turned out well. "When were you going to tell me?" I asked. Celia stopped speaking. "Tonight," she said. "Before or after dessert?" "After dinner." "Why?" "You're usually in a better mood after you eat." Nate closed his eyes. "What?" Celia said. "He is. So you brought boxes into my house, hid them by the stairs, and planned to wait until I was full. When you describe it that way, it sounds calculated. That may be because you calculated it. I did not hide the boxes. I put them out of the way. Behind the coat rack. It's a narrow hall. Who decided I'd agreed?" Neither answered. I put another carrot on my plate. It gave me something to do with the serving spoon. "Was it you?" I asked Nate. "No." "Celia?" "I didn't think you agreed. I thought you would." "That's not the same question." She rubbed her forehead. "There wasn't one moment. We talked about it." "How many times?" "I don't know. More than once?" "Yes. More than 5? Nate gave a bitter little laugh. "You want minutes from the meetings? I'd settle for an invitation." Celia set down her fork. "It started after the ice," she said. "I called Nate because you scared me. I slipped. You didn't answer your phone for 4 hours. I left it charging. You always leave it charging. Phones require charging, not in a different room from the person they belong to. I was clearing snow. You were limping when I got here. My hip was sore." "The private one?" she asked. There was no humor in it this time. I looked down at my plate. She continued more quietly. "Then the furnace, then the insurance form. Then that morning, you called and asked what day it was. I knew what day it was. You asked me. I was checking whether we were still having dinner because you'd changed your schedule. You said, 'Is it Thursday?' It was Thursday. That is not the point." Nate leaned back. "She called me in a panic. I was not in a panic. You said, 'Something is happening to Dad?'" Celia's eyes flashed. "You told me I was probably right, because you kept listing things. So you only agreed because I made a list?" "I agreed because you said he'd be safer at your place, and I needed—" He stopped. "A place," I said. He stared at his plate. The silence stayed long enough for the refrigerator to cycle off. Without the hum, I could hear the wall clock in the living room. "Nate," I said, "did Laurel ask you to leave?" Celia watched him too. He pushed his chair back an inch. "We're taking some time. Did she ask you to leave? We had a conversation. That phrase has had a difficult night. She wants space. How much?" "Why does it matter?" "Because you're planning to live in my house. I was planning to stay here for a while. You told Celia you were taking it. I didn't say taking it. You said this worked for everybody. It could. For Laurel?" His jaw tightened. "I'm not discussing my marriage at this table. You discussed my bedroom in the next room. That was different. Because I wasn't there?" He stood. Celia said, "Sit down. Stop telling me what to do. Then stop acting like Dad is the only person who made this difficult. You designed the entire thing. Because somebody had to. No, somebody had to talk to him. You turned it into a relocation project. And you were happy to help when you thought you were getting a house. I was getting breathing room, at Dad's expense. Your basement was your idea. And you said it was perfect. Because you wouldn't shut up about grab bars. I did not mention grab bars. You absolutely mentioned grab bars." I looked at Celia. She had the decency to look embarrassed. There was a bathroom safety section, she admitted. In the slideshow? The slideshow we did not make, thanks to Priya. I sat back and looked at both of them. My anger was still there, but it had changed temperature. At first it had been clean and hot. Now it felt mixed with something heavier. They had not built this plan because they agreed about me. They had built it because each needed the other's version to justify what they wanted. Celia needed Nate to confirm that I was declining. Nate needed Celia to turn his need for a house into a family solution. And I had given both of them material, a missed appointment, a sore hip, an old furnace, an open invitation Nate had mistaken for a deed, a phone call Celia had mistaken for an alarm, maybe not mistaken entirely. That was the part I did not want to touch. I picked up the 2 keys and closed my fist around them. The movers are canceled, I said. Celia nodded. I'll call tomorrow, tonight. The office is closed. Email them. All right, the boxes leave with you. She looked toward the hall. You said to leave them. I wanted to see how they looked during dinner. And presumptuous. Nate let out a breath through his nose. I looked at him. You need to work things out with Laurel without using my address as your strategy. I never said, you don't live here. His face went blank in that careful way people use when they have been hit somewhere tender and don't want you to know. I understand. I'm not saying you can never stay. You just said I don't live here. Both things can be true. You want to make sure I know my place. I know it. He took his coat from the hall. Celia followed him. Nate, don't drive. You had wine. I had half a glass. You had more in the kitchen. I'm fine. Don't use that word tonight, I said. He looked back at me, hand on the doorknob. For a moment, I thought he might apologize. Nate's face had always been generous with previews. You could see the decent impulse arrive before pride shut the door on it. I hope the house keeps you company, he said. Then he left. His car started in the driveway. The headlights swept across the dining room wall, briefly illuminating the framed photograph of Nate and Celia at a lake, both of them in their 20s and squinting into the sun. Celia began gathering the boxes. I helped her because 6 flattened boxes were awkward for one person, even an interfering person. We carried them to her car without speaking. The night air had turned cold. Nate's tire marks cut crookedly across the damp driveway. Celia opened the back of her SUV. The boxes slid in beside a plastic storage bin and a rolled rug. You'd have liked the room, she said. I nearly laughed. That's what you have? It gets good light in the morning. So does prison. Stop. All right. She pushed the boxes farther in. Priya moved her shelves, she said. She didn't want to, but she did it for me. I didn't ask her to. I know. Tell her to put them back. She already did. I looked at her. Celia closed the hatch. She put them back. Friday, she said. She told me if I couldn't say the plan out loud to you before booking movers, then I knew it was wrong. You came anyway. Yes. Why? Her eyes filled, though she would have denied it if I mentioned them. Because if I wait for you to admit you need anything, she said, I'm scared I'll wait too long. She got into her car before I could answer. I stood in the driveway until her taillights disappeared. When I went back inside, 3 plates sat on the table. Nate's meal was half eaten. Celia had barely touched hers. The gravy had formed a skin. I wrapped the leftovers, wiped the counters, and washed every dish. The 2 keys lay beside the sink. I should have felt safer with them back. Instead, when I turned out the kitchen light, the house seemed to understand before I did that nobody else could get in. I checked the locks twice before I went upstairs. That was foolish. Taking back 2 keys did not create burglars. It simply made me aware that every locked door had only me on one side of it. I left the hall light on. At 2 in the morning, I came down for water and found the ceramic rooster watching me from the refrigerator. In the dark, the thing looked less like pottery and more like a witness. Mind your business, I told it. The rooster had been made by Celia during a 6-week pottery class. She quit after declaring the instructor emotionally unsafe. The instructor had told her the rooster's feet were too large. They were. I opened the refrigerator. Containers filled the middle shelf, each one labeled in Celia's freezer tape because she had left the roll behind. Pot roast, carrots, gravy. I peeled the label off the gravy and threw it away. Then I took it back out of the trash because rejecting freezer labels at 2 in the morning was not independence. It was poor food storage. My phone buzzed at 7:15. Celia had sent a screenshot of an email. Mover deposit refund requested. confirmation pending. Below it she had typed, "I'm sorry." I stared at the words. Celia apologized the way she packed a car. Nothing loose, nothing blocking the mirrors. She did not say what she was sorry for, because that might require a second trip. I wrote, "Thank you for canceling." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, and appeared again. "Can I come by after work?" I typed, "No," erased it, then typed, "Not today." This time there were no dots. Nate did not send anything. I made coffee and carried it into the dining room. His key and Celia's sat in a saucer where I had put them before bed. I should have stored them with my own spare keys, but I had not decided whether they were household objects or evidence. The table looked too wide. I took my coffee to the kitchen. At 9, the dentist's office called to remind me about my rescheduled appointment. I wrote it on the calendar beside the refrigerator in letters large enough to be read from Ohio. Then I took a photograph of the calendar and nearly sent it to Celia. My thumb hovered over her name. I put the phone down. At 10, I called the furnace company. The noise Nate mentioned had started as a rattle during the first cold week of October. I knew what it was likely to be: a loose panel, maybe a bearing beginning to wear. Before retirement, I had managed maintenance crews for a chain of hospital buildings. I could identify failing equipment by sound, smell, and the expression on the face of the person, insisting it had only started that morning. At home, I had developed a different standard. If the heat came on, the furnace worked. If the faucet filled the sink, it did not leak enough to matter. Hospital administrators had called that deferred maintenance. I called it not spending $600 every time a machine cleared its throat. The woman at the furnace company offered me an appointment Thursday morning. "That soon?" I asked. We had a cancellation. "Did Celia Ames call you?" There was a pause. "I don't have anyone by that name on the account." "Good. Sir?" "Thursday is fine." After I hung up, I went upstairs and tightened the bathroom faucet. It took 14 minutes, including 9 spent looking for a wrench that was not where it belonged. The wrench was in the garage, inside a red toolbox with a strip of masking tape across the top. Nate. I stood at the workbench and looked at his handwriting. The garage carried every season at once. A snow shovel leaned beside a lawn spreader. 2 rakes were hooked above an artificial Christmas tree Joanne had bought during our final year together, apparently believing marital collapse was no reason to abandon pre-lit convenience. The workbench was scarred with 40 years of repairs. Nate had hammered his first nail there. Celia had once built a birdhouse with 4 walls and no entrance. I had told Nate the tools would be his someday. I remembered saying it after my shoulder surgery, when he had come over to replace a porch board. I was sitting in a lawn chair giving instructions with my arm in a sling. "No point buying your own," I had said. "All this will be yours eventually." At the time, eventually had sounded generous. I pulled the tape off the toolbox. It came away too easily. The adhesive had not gathered dust. The label was new. I crumpled it, then flattened it again against the workbench. Nate had not invented the promise. He had simply started the clock without me. By Wednesday, I had responded to 4 texts from Celia. The first asked whether the mover refund had arrived. The second reminded me about my dentist appointment. The third said Priya wanted to talk. The fourth was a photograph of the basement room. The room looked pleasant. That annoyed me. There was a wide window near the ceiling, cream-colored walls, and the blue reading chair I liked from Celia's upstairs guest room. A lamp stood beside it. On the far wall, I could see pale rectangles where Priya's shelves had been. Celia had typed, "I know this doesn't matter now. I just want you to see we weren't putting you in a dungeon." I enlarged the photograph. There was a folded blanket on the bed. I recognized it as the brown one from my hall closet. That blanket had left my house before I had. I called her. She answered before the first ring finished. "Are you okay? Why do you have my blanket?" "What?" "The brown blanket on the bed." Silence. I borrowed it to see if the colors worked. "Did you use your key?" "No. I took it Sunday before you told me. I was going to bring it back. You staged the room. I wanted you to be able to picture it. I can picture my own blanket. Dad, I'm sorry. How much else did you take?" "Nothing." "Celia. The blanket and 1 lamp." "Which lamp?" "The brass one from the guest room, but I brought that back last week." I closed my eyes. She heard what the silence meant. "I know how it sounds. You keep saying that. Because everything sounds worse when I say it out loud. That's usually useful information. I was trying to make it nice." "I know." That stopped her. The strange part was, I did know. Celia had not stolen my blanket because she wanted it. She had taken it because she could not present an unfinished room. She had put a chair by the window, selected a lamp, and chosen bedding because an attractive arrangement felt kinder than a question with an uncertain answer. "I'll bring it over," she said. "Give it to Priya." "For what?" "Her shelves were where the bed is. They're back upstairs. Give her the blanket." "She doesn't need a blanket. Neither did your basement." I ended the call before she could turn the return of a blanket into a home visit. Thursday, the furnace technician found a worn blower bearing. "It'll run," he said, "but it's only going to get louder." "How long?" He rocked his hand. "Could be months, could seize next week." That was the kind of answer maintenance people gave when they were honest, and customers hated them for it. I approved the repair. The cost made me grip the kitchen counter, but I kept that between myself and the counter. While the technician worked, I completed the insurance form Celia had left on my dining room table 2 weeks earlier. The website rejected my password 3 times. Then it locked my account. The customer service menu asked me to describe my issue in a complete sentence, misheard password as coverage, and transferred me to automobile claims. I considered calling Celia. Instead, I made another cup of coffee and began again. 2 hours later, the form was submitted. I printed the confirmation page even though the website warned me to conserve paper. The website had not conserved my morning, so I felt no obligation to help. I put the page on the refrigerator with a magnet, not for Celia. Mostly not for Celia. On Friday afternoon, I went to Landry's Market for milk and came home with a chuck roast, 3 pounds of potatoes, carrots, and a loaf of bread. I did not realize what I had done until I set the bags on the kitchen counter. Sunday dinner had been canceled nowhere, except my head. I opened the family group text. It was still called Ames Sunday, a name Priya had given it after Nate kept sending jokes to the chat, where Celia was trying to organize Thanksgiving. I typed, "No dinner here Sunday." Nate responded first. "Seriously?" Celia waited 6 minutes. "Okay, we'll give you space." The phrase bothered me. It sounded as if space were medicine she had reluctantly agreed to administer. Priya sent, "Understood." Laurel did not respond. She rarely did. I put the roast in the freezer. Saturday morning, I saw Darnell Price in the hardware store. He was standing in the plumbing aisle holding 2 faucet cartridges and arguing with an employee young enough to regard both of us as historical. "I'm telling you," Darnell said, "this one fits a Delta made before manufacturers became cowards." The employee looked at me for help. "Don't involve me," I said. "He gets stronger with witnesses." Darnell turned. He was my age, broad through the shoulders, with a silver beard that made him look thoughtful, even while threatening a faucet cartridge. We had worked together for 22 years. After I retired, we met for breakfast twice, then once, then began sending each other birthday texts that arrived within the correct month. "Well, look who left his kitchen," he said. "I leave it regularly. Not on Sundays. What are you doing with those?" "Rebuilding the sink sprayer at the Ashland supper room." "That place is still open?" "Barely. We're fixing the kitchen before the health inspector decides the stove is a religious artifact." I examined the cartridges. He had the wrong one in his left hand. I took it from him and put it back. "You need the blue package. That's for post-2005. The housing change in 2003. Darnell squinted at me. "You retired and got irritating." "I was irritating before. You had less authority to notice." He found the blue package. "We're tearing out the lower cabinets tomorrow," he said. "Come help." "Tomorrow's Sunday." I remember the days. I usually have dinner. "You always have dinner. That's why we stopped asking you anywhere." The sentence was casual. Darnell was already comparing washers. I stood beside him with my hands in my coat pockets. "I canceled it," I said. He looked over. Family trouble? Family organization. Worse. He put the cartridges in his basket. 10 o'clock. "Bring gloves." I didn't say I was coming. You didn't say you weren't. At home, the chuck roast waited in the freezer. The potatoes sat in their bag under the counter. I took out 1 potato, baked it, and ate it with leftover gravy. Across from me, the empty chair did not accuse me. It simply had no one in it. Before bed, I found my work gloves in the garage and set them beside the back door. At 9:30 Sunday morning, I was still pretending the gloves meant nothing. They sat beside the back door while I drank coffee, read the same newspaper article twice, and listened to the refrigerator make an occasional ice cube. I had not set an alarm. I woke at 6 anyway. By 8, I had peeled potatoes. I put them in a bowl of water before admitting there was no reason to peel 6 potatoes for one man. Habit had moved my hands before pride could stop them. The roast waited in the freezer. At 9:40, I poured out the potato water, dried the potatoes, and put them back in the bag. The surfaces were slick without their skins. They looked embarrassed. I know, I told them. The drive to Ashland took 12 minutes. I arrived at 10:11, so Darnell would understand I had not been eager. He was outside the supper room, carrying a cabinet door to a green dumpster. "You're late," he said. "I'm retired. That doesn't make time fictional. It makes your opinion about it less important." The Ashland Community Supper Room occupied the first floor of a narrow brick building between a laundromat and a tax preparer. I remembered it as a union meeting hall, though the union had moved years ago. The front windows had gold lettering that had faded to the color of old teeth. Inside, the dining room held 14 folding tables and a collection of mismatched chairs. Somebody had tried to make the room cheerful with yellow paint and photographs of neighborhood block parties. The kitchen was through a pair of swinging doors at the back. Darnell had described the cabinets as needing replacement. What he meant was that they had already begun returning to the earth. One lower door hung from a single hinge. The particle board beneath the sink had swollen into a gray ridge. A length of copper pipe disappeared into a hole somebody had sealed with aluminum foil and optimism. A woman in red coveralls stood in front of the stove, holding a pry bar. "This Walter?" she asked. Darnell dropped the cabinet door into the dumpster. "Unfortunately." She offered me a gloved hand. "Rosa Delgado, Walter Ames. Darnell says you know kitchens. Darnell says a lot when other people are expected to do the work." Rosa nodded. "You'll fit?" She was 62, with silver hair cropped close on the sides and a small tattoo of a wrench on her left wrist. She had managed the supper room for 7 years, though managed covered cooking, fundraising, plumbing, and preventing well-intentioned volunteers from storing bleach beside the flour. "We serve Wednesday nights and Sunday afternoons," she said. "Mostly adults from the senior building, the rooms over on Beckett, and anybody working late who wants a meal that didn't come through a car window." "You cook?" "Some weeks. Other weeks I supervise disasters." Darnell pointed toward the cabinets. "Today's disaster has screws." There were 4 other volunteers. Malik Turner, a quiet electrician in his 30s, was replacing an outlet beside the prep sink. Jeanette Cole had worked hospital food service until her knees objected, and now ran the pantry with the sternness of someone who had once counted yogurt cups for a living. The last 2 were twin brothers named Ed and Eli, both around 50, who disagreed about every measurement but produced identical numbers. Nobody asked why I was there on a Sunday. I had prepared several answers in the car. Helping an old friend, needed a faucet cartridge, nothing else going on. All of them went unused. Rosa handed me a drill. "Can you remove the doors without bringing the wall down?" "I'd have to see how attached the wall is." Correct answer. We worked for 2 hours. The cabinets were worse than they looked. One had been secured with 3 different screw types and a nail driven diagonally through a shim. Whoever installed it had possessed determination, no level, and a personal objection to future repair. Darnell and I removed the countertop while Ed and Eli argued over whether the sink had shifted or the building had. "The building," Ed said. "The sink," Eli said. "It can be both," I told them. They stared at me. Darnell said, "Don't encourage compromise. It confuses them." I laughed hard enough to lose my grip on the pry bar. It surprised me. At home, Sunday laughter usually happened on schedule. Nate told a story. Celia corrected 2 details. Priya rescued it with a dry comment. Laurel smiled if she was there. I had never thought of that as performance, but at Ashland nobody knew which version of me to expect. I did not have to land the same joke in the same place. Around 1, Rosa called a break. Jeanette brought out ham sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. There were no side dishes, no warm plates, no gravy. We ate at a folding table with tools scattered across one end. Darnell inspected my sandwich. "You look disappointed." "I'm identifying it. It's ham." "There's one piece. Lunch isn't a structural project. Bread needs support." Rosa slid half her sandwich onto my wrapper. "He told me you cook. I feed people. Same thing if they come back." Darnell drank from a paper cup. "Walter's family comes back every Sunday." I looked at him. He was chewing, not baiting me. That made it worse. "Not today," I said. Rosa glanced between us, then picked up her coffee. She had the good manners not to ask. Darnell did not. What happened? My children decided I should move. To where? My daughter's basement. Nice basement? Why does everybody ask that? Because basements vary. It's finished. See? Could be worse. I'm not moving. That the family trouble? That's the family organization. Darnell nodded slowly. They plan it without you? Movers and everything? Jeanette, who had been pretending not to listen, lowered her sandwich. My sister did that to our mother, she said. Bought labels and all. Mama switched the labels. My sister unpacked 6 boxes of canned beans in her own living room. Rosa pointed at her. Your mother was mean. She was efficient. Darnell smiled at me. You got any canned beans? I gave them their keys back. The smile faded. His eyes stayed on mine for a moment. That'll do it, he said. I had expected approval. Instead, his tone held something that sounded like caution. They shouldn't be able to walk in whenever they want, I said. They shouldn't. But nothing. Darnell. He wiped mustard from his thumb. Just make sure you took back the keys because you want a locked door, not because you want them standing outside it, regretting things. I folded the wax paper over the rest of my sandwich. You've become annoying since retirement. I'm not retired. Then you have no excuse. We returned to the kitchen. By 3, the lower cabinets were out. The wall behind them showed decades of paint colors, cream, green, yellow, then cream again. Rosa stood in the empty space with her hands on her hips. Better, she said. There are no cabinets. Exactly. Nothing left to surprise us. Malik plugged his tester into the new outlet. It lit green. Darnell collected tools while I measured the wall for replacement units. Rosa looked over my shoulder. You free Tuesday? I'm retired. You keep saying that like it means no. It means I have options. Exercise 1 at 10. She walked away before I answered. Darnell grinned. I don't like her, I said. Yes, you do. On the drive home, my shoulders ached in a clean, familiar way. Not the sharp catch that had led to surgery, but the soreness of using muscles for something other than lifting a roasting pan. I turned onto my street at 4:15. Nate was sitting on my front steps. 2 suitcases stood beside him. He had parked at the curb, straight this time. A garment bag lay across the back seat of his car. He rose when I pulled into the driveway, but did not wave. I parked in the garage and stayed behind the wheel longer than necessary. Darnell's words returned to me. Make sure you want a locked door. Nate watched me through the windshield. When I came around the side of the house, he tried the smile that had gotten him through overdue bills, bad job interviews, and most of his adolescence. Busy day? He asked. I looked at the suitcases. What happened? Laurel wants me out. You said you were taking some time. She decided the time should have a different address. His attempt at humor collapsed between us. How long? I asked. I don't know. What did she say? That she can't breathe with me there. That sounds familiar. He looked away. Can we not do this on the porch? You don't have a key, I noticed. The blue strip was still around the silver key in my kitchen. I unlocked the door. Nate carried both suitcases into the hall. He set them in the exact place where Celia's boxes had been. The symmetry was so obvious that I almost asked him to move them. Instead, I took off my coat. He smelled like stale coffee and the cologne Laurel gave him every Christmas. His hair had been combed with his fingers. A dark stain marked the cuff of his blue shirt. Did you sleep last night? I asked. Some. Where? In my car for a while. You could have called. He looked at me. Could I? The question was quiet enough to be honest. I went to the kitchen. Nate followed, but remained near the doorway, uncertain now that he could not open cabinets without permission. There's pot roast in the freezer, I said. You made pot roast? I bought one out of habit. There are leftovers from last week. He nodded. I took out the container and put it in the microwave. How long can I stay? He asked. The microwave hummed between us. I wanted to say, as long as you need. The sentence rose naturally. I had said versions of it his entire life. There will always be room. We'll figure it out. Your old man isn't going anywhere. Behind him, the suitcases waited in the hall. If I said it now, the fight would disappear for the evening. Nate would eat, shower, and fall asleep in the guest room. Tomorrow he would go to work. The next night, he would be too tired to talk. A week would pass, then a month. My anger would turn into help into routine, and routine into a promise neither of us remembered making. The microwave beeped. I set the hot container on the counter. 3 nights, I said. His face tightened. That's it? 3 nights, and tomorrow you call Laurel. She doesn't want to talk. Then you find somewhere else to stay. I'm your son. I know who you are. Do you? I handed him a plate. He did not take it. This is punishment, he said. No, it sure feels like it. I'm not putting you out tonight. I'm also not letting you move in because your marriage got hard. She threw me out. And I'm giving you 3 nights. He stared at me with the same stunned offense I had felt when I saw my name on a box. For one ugly second, that felt good. Then he took the plate, and I understood exactly what Darnell had been warning me about. The satisfaction did not last, but it had been there. That mattered. I watched Nate stand at my counter with the plate in his hands, looking less like a man who needed dinner than a man who had been charged for it. Sit down, I said. I'm not hungry. You came here with suitcases and no sleep. Eat. You don't get to order me around after telling me I have 72 hours. It's closer to 68 now. He looked at the wall clock as if I had started it deliberately. Good one. I wasn't joking. That's the problem. He carried the plate into the dining room. I reheated gravy and followed with a glass of water. The 2 keys were still in the saucer beside the wall, visible from his chair. Nate saw them. You put them on display? I put them somewhere I wouldn't lose them. You don't lose things. You misplace them for 5 minutes in poorly organized parking lots. I sat across from him. I deserved that. He cut into the roast. It had survived the microwave better than our conversation. For the first few bites, neither of us spoke. I had already eaten at Ashland, but I took a slice of bread so he would not feel observed. Where did you go today? He asked. Community supper room. You volunteered? I helped remove cabinets. Since when do you do that? Since today. He glanced at my hands. A shallow scrape crossed my right knuckle. You should put something on that. I survived. Celia would tell you to get a tetanus shot. Celia would vaccinate the cabinets. He laughed before he could stop himself. The sound loosened something, not much, but enough for him to eat another bite without stabbing it first. What happened with Laurel? I asked. He chewed slowly. I told you. You gave me the headline. She's tired. Of what? Me, apparently. Nate. I don't know what you want me to say. The truth would save time. He set down his fork. You want the truth? She said, I'm always halfway out the door. She said every job is temporary, every plan is temporary, every problem is something I wait out until somebody else fixes it. Is that true? Whose side are you on? I didn't realize there were uniforms. She said, I use this house as an escape hatch. I did not answer. He noticed. See, he said. That look. What look? The one where you've already decided she's right. I haven't decided anything. You don't have to. You sit there quietly until everybody hears the verdict anyway. That sounded enough like Celia's accusation about my voice that I put down the bread. What did you say to Laurel? I said she knew who I was when she married me. That generally goes badly. Thank you, marriage expert. It was a fair hit. I let it land. He rubbed both hands over his face. She asked where we'd be in 5 years. I said I didn't know. Who knows that? Celia. Despite himself, he smiled. Then it faded. Laurel said she could tell me exactly where I planned to be. Here, in this house. She said, every time we talk about moving, changing jobs, fixing our place, anything, I bring you up. Dad will need help. Dad's house has more room. Dad said there'll always be a place. She said, I've been waiting for my real life to start in the house I grew up in. The sentence settled between us. I looked toward the living room, where the lamps threw soft light across furniture Nate had known since he was young. His marks were still inside the hall closet, little pencil lines Joanne had drawn with dates beside them. The highest one sat just below my chin. I had preserved a great deal, maybe too much. Did you tell Celia that? I asked. No. Why not? Because she would turn it into a plan. He picked up his fork again. And because then she wouldn't have agreed to this, I said. He looked at me. There was the truth. Not all of it, but enough. You let her think your marriage just needed breathing room, I said. You let her believe moving me solved a practical problem. It was a practical problem for you, and you don't think there was anything in it for you? Being supervised in a basement, being around people who care if you answer the phone. I had people around me every Sunday, people you kept here by making them feel guilty. His voice rose on the last word. I sat still. He waited for me to deny it. I could have. I had never demanded attendance. I had never threatened, begged, or said I would be lonely. I only asked whether they were coming, paused when they said no, and cooked for them anyway. Denial would have been easy. Instead, I said, "Eat before it gets cold." Nate pushed his chair back. Right. Quiet verdict. He took the plate to the kitchen, scraped half the meal into the trash, and ran water over it as if destroying evidence. I almost told him not to waste food. Instead, I watched him carry his suitcases upstairs. The guest room was across from mine. That night, I heard him pacing after midnight. Once, the floor creaked near my door, then again as he moved away. In the morning, he was asleep at the kitchen table, with his head on folded arms. The coffee maker was empty. A mug sat beside his elbow. I filled the reservoir. He woke when the grinder started. "What time is it?" 6:40. He squinted at the window. "Why are you up?" "I live here. I mean this early. I have things to do. You're retired. You and Darnell would get along." I made coffee while he checked his phone. His expression changed as he read something. "Laurel?" I asked. "Celia." He turned the screen over. "What does she want?" "To know if I'm here." "Did you tell her?" "No." "She probably drove past and saw your car." "She doesn't do that." We looked at each other. "She does that," he admitted. His phone buzzed again. Then mine did. "Celia? Is Nate at your house?" I showed him. "Don't answer," he said. "I'm not lying for you. You don't have to lie. Just don't answer." That's how she winds up in a panic. You're the one who says she overreacts. She does. Then stop feeding it. The phrase stayed with me. I typed, "Yes, he is safe. Talk to him directly." Her answer came immediately. "He won't respond." I turned the phone face down. Nate poured coffee. "You working today?" I asked. I took a personal day. "You have many of those?" "Enough." "Where are you going to stay after Wednesday?" His shoulders dropped. "It's 6:40 in the morning. The answer won't improve at noon." My coworker Ben said I can use his couch. For how long? A week, maybe. And then? Maybe Laurel will calm down. That isn't a plan. You had no plan until somebody made one for you, and look how that went. I held his gaze. He took his coffee upstairs. The front door opened at 8:20. Nate had gone to shower. I was in the garage sorting cabinet screws to take to Ashland. I heard the door, then Celia's voice. "Dad?" She no longer had a key. The realization brought me out of the garage. She stood in the open doorway with one hand still on the knob. "You left it unlocked," she said. "I was in the garage. That's how people walk in. That's what you did." I knocked. "I didn't hear you." "So I tried the door. You could have called. I did." My phone sat on the workbench beside the screws. Celia looked past me toward the stairs. Nate's suitcases were no longer in the hall, but his shoes were beside the radiator. "Is he upstairs?" "Yes." "You said 3 nights?" "How do you know that?" He texted Priya at 1 in the morning. "What did he text?" "That I got exactly what I wanted, except now you're throwing him out." "I'm not throwing him out." "You're giving him 3 nights. That's 3 more than he planned to give me here." She stared at me. There it was again, that small, ugly pleasure. I had polished the sentence overnight. I had been waiting to use it. Celia heard that too. "This is revenge," she said. "No. You want him to feel displaced. I want him to deal with his marriage. Those can both be true." Nate appeared at the top of the stairs, hair wet, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "Checking on both of you? I'm 43, and acting 13. Don't." Celia came farther inside and lowered her voice. "Priya thinks you can stay with us for a few days." Nate laughed. "What? You moved her shelves back and now you want me in the room? It's not about the room. It's always about the room. Then go home and speak to Laurel. She asked me to leave because you lied to her." Nate went still. I looked at Celia. She closed her eyes briefly. "You talked to Laurel?" he asked. "She called me last night." "What did she say?" "That you told her dad, asked you to move in here." I turned to him. He buttoned his collar with both hands. "I didn't say he asked. She heard that you had an arrangement." "We did." "No," I said. "We had a sentence." Nate's face tightened. Celia went on. "You told her dad wanted out of the house, but was afraid to admit it. You said I was handling the move, because that's what you told me. I said I thought he'd be happier. You booked movers. You told Laurel he agreed. Both of them looked at me as if I were the fixed point around which their dishonesty had finally collided. I picked up my coat. Where are you going? Celia asked. To Ashland. We're talking. You're talking. Keep going. Dad! I stopped at the door. Nate stood halfway down the stairs. Celia stood beneath him, one hand gripping the strap of her purse. For years I had stepped between them whenever their voices rose. I translated Nate's excuses into intentions. I softened Celia's instructions into concern. Then I served food until the room became polite again. There was food in the refrigerator now. They could find it themselves. Nate has until Wednesday, I said. Celia, lock the door when you leave. I drove away before either of them could ask me to settle the argument they had built out of my life. Rosa was not expecting me until Tuesday. She stood in the center of the stripped kitchen with a tape measure clipped to her red coveralls and watched me carry in the coffee can of screws. You exercise options fast, she said. I had these sorted. Were they in danger at home? Possibly. Darnell was crouched beneath the prep sink, scraping old adhesive from the wall. He looked over his shoulder. That bad? I left 2 adults in my house. Related to you? Yes. Then those screws are safer here. I set the can on the counter harder than necessary. Half the screws jumped out and rolled across the laminate. Rosa looked at them. Sorted, huh? For the next hour, she made me inventory cabinet measurements while Darnell repaired the wall. I checked each number twice, then a third time, because Rosa had written one of them differently. You have 37 1/4, I said. That's what it is. I got 37 3/8. It's an old wall. Age doesn't change 1/8 of an inch. Darnell scraped adhesive. You sure about that? I measured again. 37 1/4. I said nothing. Rosa took the tape measure from me. You want to tell us what's happening, or do I let you order cabinets that don't fit? My son is staying at my house. Darnell paused. The one taking the garage? He's not taking anything, except a guest room, for 3 nights. Rosa leaned against the counter. And after 3, he goes to a coworker's place. You tell him that? He knows. No, I mean the coworker. I looked at her. Does the coworker know? She asked. Nate says he does. That's not what I asked. I'm aware. She handed back the tape measure. I measured the opening a 4th time and got 37 5/16, which should not have been possible. Darnell stood and wiped his hands on a rag. Come look at this wall. I can see it. Closer. I stepped into the empty cabinet space. He pointed to a shallow groove in the plaster. What's that? Old water damage. No? Then why ask? It's where you've been dragging the tape crooked. Rosa smiled. I clipped the tape shut. Both of you are becoming difficult. We were difficult when you got here, Darnell said. You had less authority to notice. He enjoyed returning my own words too much. We broke for coffee in the dining room. Sunlight came through the front windows and turned the scratched tabletops pale. No one had arranged a place for me. I pulled out a chair and sat. Darnell poured coffee from a metal urn. You give him 3 nights because that's what he needs, he asked, or because 3 sounds firm. He needs to handle his marriage. Probably. He lied to Laurel, told her I wanted him here. That sounds like a problem. It is. His problem? I waited. Darnell sipped his coffee. You've developed an interrogation style, I said. I managed electricians. Silence made them confess. I managed you? Poorly. I turned the paper cup between my palms. I don't want him moving in, I said. Then don't let him. I'm not. But you want him to understand why? He should. May not. That doesn't make me wrong. No. Darnell looked toward the kitchen. Rosa was inside explaining to Malik why a microwave could not share a circuit with the refrigerator, no matter how nicely they asked. You can set a boundary, he said, or you can deliver a lesson. Hard to do both without enjoying one too much. I'm not enjoying this. You looked pleased when you said 3 nights? I did not answer. He nodded as if I had. I liked you better with the plumbing, I said. Plumbing doesn't argue. Plumbing absolutely argues. Then you like being argued with. I threw my empty cup at him. He caught it. When I got home, Celia's car was gone. Nate sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open and a headset around his neck. The dining room chairs had been pushed back into place. 2 clean coffee mugs dried beside the sink. What happened? I asked. You left. I know my part. She offered me the basement. You said no? I said I'd rather sleep in my car. That was rude. She said so. He closed the laptop. Then she cried, which I guess was your plan. I didn't plan any of this. That's right, we're the planners. His tone invited a fight. I hung my coat by the back door instead. Did you call Laurel? She won't answer. Did you leave a message? Yes. What did you say? That's none of your business. Fair. He looked disappointed that I agreed. I opened the refrigerator. The leftover pot roast container was empty. You ate all of it? I was hungry. There were 4 servings, not the way I served it. He smiled slightly. I found eggs and started making an omelet. Nate reopened his laptop but did not put on the headset. After a minute, he said, "She changed the locks. Laurel, I went by to get work clothes. My key didn't fit. The egg carton remained open in my hand. Did she leave your clothes outside? No. She was there. She let me in. Then why change the locks? She said she needed to know I couldn't just walk in whenever I felt like it." Neither of us looked toward the saucer holding his key. I cracked another egg. "How did that feel?" I asked. "Don't. I'm asking. You're making a comparison." The comparison made itself. He shoved the laptop away. "She's my wife, and I'm your father. I lived with her. You plan to live here. Are we going to do this every time I come into the kitchen? You brought up the locks. You asked what happened. I whisked the eggs too hard. Some went over the rim of the bowl. Nate got a towel and wiped it before it reached the floor. I'm not asking for the house," he said. "Not now. I never was. You labeled the tools. Can we burn that box? Celia has it. Then can we burn her car?" I smiled despite myself. Nate leaned against the counter, but not the refrigerator. "I thought you'd be okay with it," he said. "Why?" "Because you always said this place felt empty." I didn't say that. You didn't have to. The words landed with uncomfortable accuracy. He went upstairs while I ate the omelet. During the next 2 days, we developed the habits of men sharing a house while pretending the arrangement had no duration. Nate woke earlier than I did and made coffee strong enough to remove paint. He took sales calls from the dining room, where his voice became smooth and certain. "No, Tom, I hear you. What I'm saying is we can make the delivery window work if we stop treating Friday as sacred. He could solve a stranger's shipping problem in 6 minutes. Then Laurel would text, and he would stare at the screen for 20 without answering. He washed dishes badly but consistently. He replaced the dead bulb above the back steps without mentioning it. On Tuesday evening, he cooked grilled cheese sandwiches and burned one side of mine. You use too much heat, I said. You use too much childhood criticism. It's bread. Then eat it, I did. We watched a baseball replay with the sound low. For an hour, neither of us talked about moving, Laurel, keys, or basements. Nate fell asleep on the sofa with his feet on the coffee table. I put a blanket over him. Not the brown one. Celia still had that. On Wednesday morning, 2 suits hung from the doorframe. Nate packed them into the garment bag before work. His suitcases waited by the front door again. You don't have to leave until tonight, I said. You said 3 nights. I'm aware. It's morning. I know how nights work. Ben gets off at 4. I'm meeting him there. Does Ben's couch exist? He sent a picture. Did you ask how long? A week? And after that? He zipped the smaller suitcase. I'll find a place. Do you have money for a deposit? His hands stopped. I'm not asking you for money. I didn't offer. You were about to. No. I was going to ask if you'd thought about it. What difference does that make? It makes the problem yours. He stared at me. I wished I had phrased it differently. Not because it was untrue, but because truth can still be sharpened for use. Call Laurel again, I said. I will. If Ben's situation changes, tell me before you sleep in the car. His expression shifted. Does that mean I can come back? It means, tell me. That's not an answer. It's the one I have. Nate lifted the suitcases. At the door, he stopped. You know what the worst part is? He said. I actually thought Sunday dinner meant this was home. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. It is home, I said. Not mine. No. He nodded once. The front door closed behind him. Through the window, I watched him load his car. He did not look back before driving away. On the table, he had left the blue key. He must have taken it from the saucer during the night. It lay beside a folded note. I picked up the key first. The note said, Don't worry. I didn't make a copy. The cruelty was small, exact, and deserved more than I wanted to admit. I opened the front door, but his car was already gone. For the rest of the morning, the house remained exactly as I had demanded it be. Mine, quiet, secure. By noon, I had checked the lock 3 times. The fourth time I checked, the lock was still locked. I was standing in the hallway with Nate's note in my hand when the doorbell rang. Priya stood on the porch holding my brown blanket in a clear plastic bag. She was 41, tall and narrow, with dark hair cut in a straight line at her jaw. Priya had a way of standing perfectly still while other people exhausted themselves. It was one of the qualities that made her good for Celia and occasionally infuriating to everybody else. "I washed it," she said. "It wasn't dirty. It's been a week in our basement. Does your basement have a disease? Celia's been sleeping down there." I opened the door wider. Priya stepped inside, but did not go beyond the hall. Her eyes moved to the saucer holding 3 silver keys. She told me, "You took those back." "2. Nate left another. He had 2 copies?" "No. I gave his back while he was staying here, and he returned it, with commentary." I handed her the note. Priya read it once, folded it along the existing crease, and returned it. "He gets that from you," she said. "What?" "The ability to fit a knife in an envelope." I took the blanket out of the bag. It smelled like the lavender detergent Celia used because an online article had convinced her normal detergent disrupted sleep. Why is Celia sleeping in the basement? Because I asked her not to sleep upstairs. I looked at Priya. "She's not the only Ames who can set a boundary," she said. "What happened?" "She said I made her look foolish in front of you. You weren't there." Apparently my opinion was. Priya walked into the kitchen and sat at the table without being invited. That was unusual. She normally asked whether I wanted company in my own room, a habit I had once considered overly formal. I put the blanket over the back of a chair. "Coffee? No. Tea? No." "Then I don't know how to conduct this." "Sit." That sounded like Celia. It's contagious. I sat across from her. Priya rested her hands on the table. She wore a thin gold ring on each thumb, and both were turned inward toward her palms. "She thinks I betrayed her," Priya said. "I think she betrayed herself before I got involved." "I don't know what that means. She knew you might say no. That's why she needed the room finished first. She thought if it looked comfortable enough, refusing it would make you unreasonable. That part, I understand. You do the same thing." I leaned back. "I have never prepared a basement for her. You prepare dinner." The room went quiet. Priya did not soften it. "You cook for 5 people whether 5 people agree to come or not. You do favors nobody requested. You keep objects from 20 years ago because somebody might want them someday. Then when we make a different choice, we're not just saying no to dinner or a lamp. We're rejecting everything you did to make the choice obvious. I cook because people need to eat. Celia organizes because people need help. That's different, is it?" "Yes." "How?" "I don't rearrange people's lives." Priya's eyes moved toward the blanket. "No," she said. "You arrange the room and wait for people to feel bad about leaving it." I stood. The chair legs scraped the floor. "If you came here to defend what she did, I didn't. You seem to have a flexible approach. I told her the plan was wrong. I moved my shelves back before she came here because I thought seeing that would stop her. It didn't." "No. She borrowed your worst quality, too. Which one is that?" "She'd rather be injured by a predictable outcome than risk being surprised by an honest answer." I stared at her. Priya turned one of her rings. "She loves you," she said. "She also resents how much space worrying about you takes in her head. I didn't put it there. You contribute furniture." I wanted her out of the house. I also wanted her to keep speaking because she was saying what Celia could not say without converting it into an appointment. "Why didn't you call me?" I asked. "When?" "When you knew about the movers. I thought Celia would tell you." "She didn't. I was wrong. That's convenient." "No, Walter. Convenient would be pretending I wasn't part of it." She stood. "I helped carry your reading chair downstairs. I argued about the shelves, but I still made room. I told myself I was supporting my wife. Really, I was helping her avoid a conversation, because living with her discomfort was harder than moving furniture. That answer removed the place where I had intended to put my anger. Priya lifted her coat from the back of the chair. "I'm not asking you to forgive her," she said. "I'm asking you not to turn this into proof that needing anyone is dangerous. I don't need a basement. I didn't say you did." She stopped in the hallway beside the keys. "Nate left?" "This morning. Celia said you gave him 3 nights. He has Ben's couch. Is that what he needs?" "It's what he arranged." "That isn't what I asked. You've been talking to Darnell." "I don't know who that is. You'd like him. I doubt it." At the door, Priya looked back. "Celia's making dinner. Sunday, she said. I have plans. I didn't invite you. Then why tell me? So, you know the family continues to exist when you don't feed it. She stepped onto the porch. I closed the door more gently than I wanted to. The brown blanket stayed over the kitchen chair for 2 days. Every time I passed it, I heard Priya say, "You arranged the room." I considered calling Celia. I considered calling Nate. Instead, I called the dentist and confirmed my appointment, even though I had already written it on the calendar and received 2 automated reminders. The receptionist seemed confused by my enthusiasm. At Ashland, the new cabinets arrived in flat boxes. Rosa believed instructions were propaganda created by manufacturers to undermine experienced people. Darnell believed instructions should be read after the first mistake, so you could identify who to blame. I read them before either man could damage anything. By Saturday, we had the cabinet frames assembled. Ed and Eli installed the doors, which meant each cabinet had to survive a 10-minute debate about hinge direction. Malik replaced the last damaged outlet. Jeanette filled 3 pantry shelves with canned tomatoes, while threatening anyone who stacked them by color instead of expiration date. Nobody asked about my family again. That felt like a gift until Sunday morning, when I saw the chuck roast in my freezer. I took it out and set it on the counter. For 12 years, Sunday had begun with thawing meat and ended with Celia carrying leftovers to her car in containers she promised to return. Nate would stand in the kitchen eating one more piece while I wrapped the rest. Priya dried dishes because she disliked the way I loaded the dishwasher. Laurel sometimes stayed at the table with the last glass of wine, quiet after everybody else had migrated toward the door. I wondered what Celia was cooking. I wondered if Nate had been invited. I wondered whether Laurel would go without him. Then I put the roast back in the freezer and drove to Ashland. Rosa handed me an apron. I don't wear aprons. You're making rolls. I don't need an apron to make rolls. You have flour on your coat. I looked down. Give me the apron. The kitchen was louder during service preparation. Pots struck steel counters. Jeanette opened cans with the speed of a factory machine. Rosa stirred 2 pans of chicken and rice while shouting quantities to Malik, who had made the mistake of offering to portion salad. Darnell stood at the prep table, peeling carrots badly. You're taking half the carrot with the skin, I told him. Then, peel your own. I will. You're making rolls. I can do both. Rosa pointed a wooden spoon at me. No. It was a small word, delivered without fear that I would take it as rejection. I went back to the rolls. The first tray came out well. The second was rising beside the stove when my phone vibrated. Nate. I wiped flour from my hands and answered. Dad, where are you? Ashland, my car won't start. What happens when you turn the key? Clicking. Battery? I know it's the battery. Then why ask? Because I have an interview in 40 minutes. I stepped into the dining room, where volunteers were unfolding chairs. What interview? Regional sales manager at Herrick. You didn't tell me. I'm telling you now. Where are you? Ben's apartment. That's 15 minutes in the other direction. I know where it is. You have jumper cables? Yes. Ask Ben. He's at work. Ask a neighbor. I don't know his neighbors. I could picture the parking lot, Nate in his good suit with the hood raised. He had never maintained a battery properly. I had told him twice that winter to clean the terminals. Call Garrison Auto, I said. They have roadside service. I don't have time. Then call a rideshare. I need the car after. I have to go back to work. Get the car fixed after the interview. Dad, please. You're 15 minutes away. I'm helping serve dinner. There was a pause. You're cooking for strangers? Yes. And you can't leave for half an hour to help your son? I watched Darnell carry chairs past the doorway. They're expecting me. So was I. The words came quietly. Before I could answer, Rosa shouted from the kitchen, Walter, your rolls. Smoke touched the ceiling. I ran back. The bottoms of the rolls had gone black, and the tops were dark enough to threaten dental work. Rosa opened the oven and pulled out the tray. Nate, call Garrison, I said. You know what? Forget it. He hung up. I stared at the phone. Rosa set the tray on the stove. Problem? My son's car won't start. So go. He can call roadside service. Then why are you holding your phone like it bit you? I burned the rolls. I've seen fire. Those are just ugly. She lifted one, examined the bottom, and began cutting away the black layer with a bread knife. You can't serve those. Watch me. We have another tray. We need both. Darnell came in, smelled the air, and smiled. Family trouble? Roll trouble. Rosa handed him a knife. Scrape. Nobody took away my apron. Nobody suggested I sit down. Nobody spoke gently or made a list of reasons I should no longer be trusted near an oven. We cut the black bottoms off 30 rolls and brushed them with garlic butter. At 3, 47 adults ate chicken, rice, carrots, salad, and rolls that were shorter than intended. Jeanette complained they were too salty. Ed took 3. The meal continued. My phone stayed silent until we began washing pans. Then a message from Nate appeared, made the interview. Garrison says, "Alternator, not battery. Thanks for the number." I read it twice. No accusation, no request. Somehow that was worse. I typed, "How did the interview go?" The 3 dots appeared. Fine. I waited for more. Nothing came. At 5:30, I drove home carrying the uncooked roast Rosa had refused to let me donate because we already have enough beef and too many men trying to prove something with it. Celia's car was parked in my driveway. She stood on the back steps holding a casserole dish covered in foil. I got out slowly. "What happened?" I asked. "Nothing happened." "Then why are you here?" She held out the dish. "Sunday dinner," she said. It went badly. I looked at the foil, then at her face. Priya said the family would continue without me. It did. And? Celia lowered the dish. Nobody knew what to do with it. "Who came?" I asked. "Priya lives there, so technically she was already present." "Celia. Nate came late. Laurel came on time. Separately?" "Yes." I unlocked the back door. Celia followed me into the kitchen and set the casserole on the stove. "What is it?" I asked. "Chicken. It has corners. It's chicken divan. That sounds like furniture. You've eaten it before. I've survived many things before. Normally that would have earned a lecture on gratitude." Celia only removed the foil and stared at the pale green surface. I hung my coat over a chair. Flour from the Ashland kitchen had dried on one sleeve. She noticed the apron folded under my arm. "You really went there," she said. "I told you I had plans. You missed a bad meal." So I heard. It wasn't bad because of the food. The edges of the casserole were burned, and the middle appeared damp. I decided not to challenge her conclusion. Celia opened my silverware drawer, took out a serving spoon, then stopped. "May I?" The question sounded unnatural in her mouth. "It's a spoon. That isn't what I asked." "Yes, you may use the spoon." She put it beside the dish without serving anything. I leaned against the counter. What happened? Laurel arrived with a bottle of wine and no Nate. Priya asked whether she wanted to wait for him. Laurel said she had spent 17 years waiting for Nate and was hungry. That sounds like Laurel. You know, she's very funny when she's furious. I've seen glimpses. Nate got there 40 minutes late in a rideshare. His alternator died. He called me. I know. What did he say? That you gave him a garage number and went back to feeding strangers. He had an interview. He made it. So he told you how it went? He said he thought it went well. I looked at my phone on the counter. "Fine," he had typed to me. "Did he say anything else? About you?" I didn't specify. "You didn't have to." Celia pulled out a chair and sat. She looked tired in a way that did not invite inspection. The knot in her hair had loosened. One side of her blouse was wrinkled where a seatbelt had crossed it. He said, "You made your choice," she said. "What choice?" "Apparently between him and some burned rolls. They weren't burned on top. Is that important? People ate them. Then I'm happy for the rolls." I opened the refrigerator and took out 2 bottles of water. Celia accepted one, but did not open it. "Did Laurel speak to him?" I asked, eventually. Priya tried to seat them across from each other. Laurel moved her plate. "Where?" "Next to me." "Good choice." "Dad." "What?" "You're doing it." "Doing what?" Enjoying his discomfort. I unscrewed my water bottle. "I didn't put him in that situation." "No, but you like that somebody else finally has to feel what you felt." The refrigerator hummed behind me. Celia looked toward the saucer of keys. "I understand it," she said. "I liked it too, for about 10 minutes. What happened after 10? Laurel stopped being polite. That was saying something. Laurel could turn politeness into a barrier high enough to require climbing equipment. Celia described the dinner in pieces. She had made the chicken dish because Priya suggested choosing something that was hers, not one of my meals. Celia had searched 3 recipe sites, combined the most highly rated parts, and created enough for 10 people. "You cooked for 10? Not intentionally." "How many chicken breasts?" 8. "For 4 adults?" The recipe said 6 servings. You added 2 breasts? I thought Nate might be hungry. I drank my water without comment. I hear it now, she said. Good. Laurel arrived with the wine and placed it on the counter without asking whether anyone wanted it. Nate arrived after the casserole had been on the table 20 minutes. He apologized to Priya, thanked Celia, and said nothing to his wife. Celia tried to start dinner with a toast. To what? I asked. Family. That was ambitious. Priya told me that afterward. Nate asked Laurel if she had received his messages. Laurel said receiving was not the problem. He asked when he could come home. She asked which one. I looked down at my bottle. That shut him up, Celia said. For how long? Long enough for me to ask if anybody wanted more broccoli. Did they? No. The meal deteriorated from there. Nate accused Laurel of using one bad year to rewrite their marriage. Laurel said it had not been 1 year, just the first year he could no longer hide behind a future plan. He told her she had always looked down on the house. She said she had not looked down on it. She had looked at it every time he refused to commit to their own life. Priya tried to slow them down. Celia tried to assign each person 5 uninterrupted minutes to speak. I laughed. I panicked, she said. You establish meeting rules at dinner? I had a timer on my phone. What was the agenda? Stop. I'm asking for myself. If this becomes a tradition, I need to prepare. Nate left before dessert. What was dessert? Apple crisp. From scratch? Yes. Was it good? Celia's mouth moved. It was excellent. Then the evening wasn't a total loss. Laurel stayed. That surprised me. Why? She helped Priya clean up. Then she sat in the kitchen and cried. The humor went out of the room. Did she tell you to tell Nate anything? No. She made me promise I wouldn't. And I won't. I nodded. Celia looked at the casserole. I thought if I could get everybody to the table, they'd remember how to be a family. That's a lot to ask of broccoli. You did it. No, I fed people. You made it look like the same thing. We sat with that. For years I had judged successful dinners by empty plates and how long people stayed. If Nate and Laurel argued in the car on the way home, I did not see it. If Priya resented losing every Sunday afternoon, she dried the dishes anyway. If Celia arrived worried and left with leftovers, I counted the evening as proof we were fine. A table could conceal as much as it gathered. Why did you bring this here? I asked. The casserole? Yes. I always bring you something when I cook too much. You don't usually cook too much. I do now? She gave a small, tired laugh. I drove here without thinking, she said. I put the dish in the car and came here because Sunday dinner ends here, even when it starts at my house. I took 2 plates from the cabinet. Celia watched me. This doesn't mean you're forgiven, I said. I didn't ask. It doesn't mean I'm moving into the basement. The blanket looked better than you would have. That is the first sensible thing anybody has said about it. I served us small portions of chicken Devon and heated them in the microwave. The middle remained damp. We ate at the kitchen table. It was not good. The broccoli had surrendered its shape, and the sauce tasted like a committee had approved it. I finished my portion anyway. Celia watched me put down the fork. Well? I have notes. Of course you do. The chicken needed salt. You're not supposed to have much salt. That does not change the chicken's needs. She smiled into her water bottle. Before she left, she put her plate in the dishwasher and did not rearrange anything else. At the door, she hugged me without making the hug an argument. Can I call you tomorrow? She asked. Yes. What time? Surprise me. That isn't funny. It is a little. She drove away with most of the casserole. I kept enough for one lunch because refusing all of it would have made the gesture too clear. Upstairs, my right hip caught on the 7th step. Not a fall, not even close. A short, hot line of pain ran from the outside of my hip down my thigh. I gripped the railing and waited. 10 seconds later, it eased. I looked down the staircase. Celia would have turned those 10 seconds into a paragraph on her phone. Nate would have told me to replace the carpeted treads. Priya would have asked whether the pain changed what I wanted. I went upstairs. The 2nd bedroom held an exercise bike with a towel draped over it, 2 boxes of tax records, and a dresser nobody used. The 3rd had become storage for Christmas decorations and Joanne's old sewing machine, which she had declined to take because, according to her, it had bad energy. The 4th was the guest room Nate had slept in. His indentation still marked the pillow. I had defended 4 bedrooms as if every room were occupied by principal. In reality, I lived in the kitchen, the den, one bedroom, and the paths between them. The next morning, I called Darnell. "I'm not moving into a basement," I said when he answered. "Good morning to you too. Did I wake you?" "No. I was deciding whether retirement made clocks fictional. I've been thinking about the house. That seems overdue. You're becoming smug. You call early, you get the morning version." I sat at the kitchen table with coffee. The brown blanket had been folded and returned to the hall closet. "How did you know when it was time to move?" I asked. Darnell was quiet. He had sold his house 2 years after his wife left him. Not died, left. I had always appreciated that he refused to improve the story for sympathy. "When I realized I was fixing rooms I never entered," he said. "That's all?" "No. I realized I kept the place because selling it felt like agreeing with Sheila that our life there was over. What changed? The life was over, whether I agreed or not. House didn't care." I looked toward the dining room. "Do you regret it?" "I regret paying for a storage unit. Everything else fits. I don't want one of those developments with organized card nights. Nobody can force you to play cards." Celia could, from several miles away. He told me Rose's building had a ground floor apartment coming open, not at Ashland, but 3 blocks from it, above an old bakery that now sold expensive coffee and bread shaped like farm equipment. The apartment faced a courtyard. The kitchen was small. "How small?" I asked. "You'd have to stop cooking for the Steelers. I already have." The answer came out before I had decided it was true. Darnell gave me the manager's number. I wrote it on the same notepad where Celia had once listed smoke detector batteries. For 2 days, I moved the paper around the kitchen. On Thursday, Nate called. "The interview went well," he said. "You already said that. They offered me the job." "That's good. It's in Cleveland." I stood beside the sink, looking through the window at my backyard. "How far?" 2 hours, depending on traffic." "What about Laurel? I haven't accepted. Did you tell her?" "Yes." "What did she say?" "She asked whether I wanted the job or wanted another way not to decide. That sounded like Laurel, too." "What do you want?" I asked. "I don't know." For once I did not fill the silence with an offer. Nate waited, perhaps expecting me to say there would always be room, that Cleveland was close, that he could store things in my garage. I said, "Then you should figure that out before you answer them. I thought you might have an opinion. I have several. Are you going to share them? Not unless you ask for one." Another silence. "I'll call you," he said. After we hung up, I found the apartment manager's number under the pepper shaker. I called before I could move it again. The manager said I could see the place at 11 the next morning. I did not tell Celia. I did not tell Nate. I did not even tell Darnell. At 11, I stood in an empty apartment with an ugly kitchen, good morning light, and enough room for one table. For the first time since the boxes appeared in my hallway, I looked at a move that belonged entirely to me. The kitchen cabinets were painted a color I can only describe as wet oatmeal. One door sat slightly lower than the others. The counter was a laminate imitation of granite, produced by someone who had seen granite described but never photographed. An electric stove occupied the wall beside the refrigerator, leaving 6 inches of counter space on one side and a narrow strip on the other. "I'd need a work table," I said. The apartment manager, Marlene, glanced at the empty dining area. "You could put one there. That's where the table goes." "You cook a lot?" "Enough to require both a table and a surface." She nodded as if I had confirmed a medical condition. Marlene was in her 50s and wore green sneakers with a gray business suit. She had already explained the building's recycling rules, guest parking, quiet hours, and the bakery's legal right to begin deliveries at 5 in the morning. "You get used to the noise," she said. "I manage the hospital maintenance. I don't trust any sound people tell me I'll get used to. Then the bakery smell may help." As if summoned, warm bread drifted through the courtyard window. The apartment had 1 bedroom, a small den, and a bathroom, with a shower I could enter without lifting my leg over a tub. I noticed that last part and pretended not to. Morning light covered the living room floor. The windows faced an enclosed courtyard where 2 metal tables sat beneath a tree that had lost half its leaves. An older man in a red sweater was reading outside with his feet on a second chair. He did not look endangered by apartment life. The bedroom would hold my bed and dresser. The den could fit the reading chair, bookshelves, and a narrow desk. The dining area would take a 6-person table if 6 people were willing to pull in their elbows. No guest room, No room waiting for Nate, no basement for me. I walked back to the kitchen and opened every cabinet. Marlene watched without comment. "This hinge is loose," I said. "We'll fix it before move-in. I can fix a hinge. We'll still fix it." "What about painting? You can repaint with approval." "I'm asking about the cabinets. They're staying oatmeal, so you admit it. That color was chosen before my time." I respected her refusal to accept responsibility. She gave me the application. I folded it once and put it in my coat pocket. "When do you need an answer?" I asked. "There are 2 other people scheduled to see it. I dislike that. Not because I expected the apartment to remain empty for my convenience, but because a deadline made every choice feel like Celia had entered the room. I don't decide where to live under pressure," I said. Marlene shrugged. "Then don't. If this one goes, another opens eventually." That was the first thing anyone had said about moving that did not sound like an argument. I walked the 3 blocks to Ashland. Rosa was in the kitchen lining the new cabinets with white paper. "You look suspicious," she said. "I looked at the apartment in your building." "That explains it? What?" "Those cabinets make everybody look betrayed." "You live there?" "Second floor." "Darnell said it was your building. I assumed you knew somebody." "I know me." He should have mentioned that. "Would it have changed whether the kitchen is ugly?" "No." Then he practiced restraint. Darnell came through the swinging doors carrying a case of canned beans. "You saw it? You told her?" I asked if the unit was still available. "So the 2 people after me are invented?" Rosa snorted. "No," Darnell said. "One is Jeanette. Jeanette wants it. She wants everything within walking distance because her niece filed a complaint." I looked toward the dining room. Jeanette was arranging salt shakers by fullness. She doesn't even cook. "That's an advantage in that kitchen," Rosa said. I took off my coat. For 2 hours, I installed drawer pulls while Jeanette ignored me. Every time she passed, I wondered whether she had submitted an application already. At lunch, she sat across from me and opened a container of tuna salad. "You viewing the ground floor unit?" she asked. "Possibly. Too dark. It gets morning light. I need afternoon. Then it's unsuitable for you. I haven't decided. You just said it was too dark. I contain complexity." Rosa laughed into her coffee. I went home with the application still in my pocket. The house greeted me with the furnace coming on quietly. The new bearing produced a low, even hum. I stood in the hall and listened to a repaired machine doing its job in 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a dining room, den, kitchen, basement, and garage. Upstairs, I opened the closet in the guest room. Nate had left a shirt behind, blue with a narrow white stripe. It hung beside 2 empty garment bags and Joanne's old winter coat. I had told her it was still there 6 years earlier. She said to donate it. I had not. The coat was good wool. I took it out, along with Nate's shirt, the garment bags, and a box containing 3 curtain rods. I carried everything downstairs. By the 3rd trip, my hip hurt. Not enough to justify Celia's basement. Enough to make the ground floor shower more attractive. I set 4 empty boxes in the dining room. These were ordinary boxes from the garage. No labels, no decisions. I opened the first cabinet in the sideboard and found photographs, loose prints, albums, envelopes from drugstores that no longer existed. Nate in a suit too large for him. Celia with braces and an expression that warned the photographer to work quickly. Joanne and me standing beside a rented cabin, both sunburned, her head on my shoulder. I sat on the floor. The application crackled inside my coat pocket. I called Joanne before I had time to think better of it. She answered on the 4th ring. "Walter, you left a coat here." A pause. "Is this an emergency?" "No." "Then hello?" "Hello, how are you?" "I'm considering a smaller place." Her tone changed. Not alarmed. Interested. "Are you? There's an apartment near Ashland." "The supper room?" "You know about that?" Celia called. "Of course. She didn't tell me about the apartment. She doesn't know." "Then what did she tell me, Walter?" "The first move." Joanne exhaled. "I told her she was out of line. That makes 2 of us. I also told her you trained her to expect resistance. That makes 1 of us." She laughed, the same brief laugh she used to give when I confirmed an old complaint. "Do you want the coat?" I asked. "No." "The sewing machine?" "No." "Our photographs?" "Which ones?" "All of them." "I want some." "Don't decide which ones I want." I looked at the boxes. That appears to be a family concern. It predates the children. We agreed I would send her pictures of the albums before doing anything. Then she asked what the apartment looked like. "Small. That wasn't my question. The kitchen is ugly, then you like it. Why would I like an ugly kitchen? Because it gives you something to fix before it asks anything emotional. I almost hung up. Instead, I said, "It has good light." Joanne was quiet. "You always wanted morning light," she said. "I have morning light here." "Not in the kitchen?" I looked toward the window above the sink. By 10, the neighboring maple shadowed it. "How do you remember that?" "I was married to you for 31 years. I remember things that didn't work too." We said goodbye politely. I called Celia next. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yes." "Why did you pause?" I breathed. "People breathe while talking. I'm looking at an apartment tomorrow." "You're what?" "I already looked at it. I want you and Nate to see it tomorrow." "Where?" "Near Ashland. Is it a retirement building?" "It contains people who have retired and people who have not." "Does it have an elevator?" "It has a ground floor." "How many bedrooms?" "Celia." She stopped. "Tomorrow at 11, I said. Can you come?" "Yes." "Ask Nate." "Why me?" "I'm asking for one thing." "Okay, nobody measures anything." She sighed. "Okay." Nate came in his own car the next morning. The alternator had been replaced. He wore a navy suit and carried no tape measure. Celia and Priya arrived together. I had invited only Celia, but Priya stayed near the courtyard door, as if prepared to leave if asked. Rosa crossed the courtyard, carrying a laundry basket. She saw us through the window and gave me a wave that was too cheerful to be innocent. "You'd know somebody here?" Celia asked. "Several people." "That's good. It was already good before you approved it." She looked down. I regretted the sentence but did not retrieve it. We walked through the rooms. Celia checked the shower, the windows, and the distance between the stove and sink. She asked Marlene about emergency maintenance but did not request response time statistics. Priya stood in the patch of morning light. "This is nice," she said. "The kitchen isn't," I told her. "That seems survivable." Nate said very little. He opened the den closet. He looked at the bedroom, then the courtyard, then returned to the kitchen. "What happens to the house?" he asked. The question stopped Celia at the bathroom door. "I'll put it up for sale when I'm ready." "To anybody?" "To whoever buys it." He pressed his lips together. "Nate," Priya said. "No, it's fine. I'm asking." I looked at him. "What do you want me to say?" "That we could discuss options." "Are you asking to buy it?" "I don't know. You were interviewing for a job in Cleveland 4 days ago." "I haven't accepted. What does Laurel want?" "This isn't about Laurel. That's why it worries me." He walked into the living room. "You'd rather sell the house to strangers than give me time to figure things out. I'm not moving so you can have the house, and I'm not staying so you can have more time. You made that clear." "No, I'm making it clear now, before any movers, before any boxes." Nate looked at me. The distinction reached him. It did not comfort him. Celia touched the oatmeal cabinet. "Why this place?" she asked. "Because I don't need 4 bedrooms. Because my hip hurts on the stairs." Her head came up. "Don't." I didn't say anything. Your face did. She closed her mouth. "Because I can walk to Ashland," I continued. "Because the light is good. Because it is not your basement. That last one feels personal. It is. At least you're honest." "I'm trying." Marlene waited in the hallway with the application on a clipboard. Nate saw it. "You already decided." "I'm discussing it before I sign." "That isn't a discussion. It's an announcement." He was right. Not entirely, but enough. I took the clipboard from Marlene and set it on the kitchen counter without signing. "What would a discussion look like?" I asked. Nate had no answer. Celia did. "You'd ask what we think," she said. "All right. What do you think?" She looked around the small apartment. Her eyes moved from the ground floor windows to the shower, the narrow hall, and the 6 inches of counter beside the stove. "I think I'm hurt that you'd choose this over my house," she said. "I also think that's exactly why you need to." Nate stared out at the courtyard. Priya said nothing. "And you?" I asked him. "I think the house was the only place I never had to earn my way back into." His voice was low. I stepped beside him. "That may be why you can't live there." He nodded once, angry and wounded and listening. I signed the application. Not because they agreed, because for the first time, all of us understood that agreement was not the same thing as permission. Marlene approved the application 2 days later. I signed the lease for the first of the month, which gave me 5 weeks to reduce 40 years of possessions to what would fit around oatmeal cabinets. Celia responded to the family group text with 3 questions about the lease, 2 about parking, and 1 about whether the windows had working locks. Then, before I could object, she deleted all 6 and wrote, "Congratulations, Dad." Nate waited until evening. "Glad you found what you want." There was no punctuation. I had become old enough to understand that punctuation could be emotional, though I still resented being required to diagnose its absence. Priya sent a photograph of the brown blanket folded in my hall closet. "Looks like it made the cut." I replied, "Pending review." Joanne asked for 14 photographs, the blue serving bowl her mother had given us, and none of the furniture. She did not want the sewing machine or winter coat, but she wanted me to stop telling people she had abandoned both. "I did not abandon them," she said over the phone. "I declined them. For 12 years. You had a donation center in Pittsburgh the entire time." That was difficult to argue. A realtor named Frank Moss walked through the house with a legal pad and the tact of a man who understood that every flaw he named had once been somebody's choice. "Some buyers may update the wallpaper," he said. "Some buyers lack patience. The kitchen's in good shape. I replaced the cabinet hinges. I can see that." He suggested removing half the furniture before listing the house so the rooms would appear larger. "They are large," I said. "People need to imagine their own things here. They're welcome to use imagination." Frank looked toward the dining room. "Are you sure you're ready to sell?" "No." "Would you like to wait?" "No." He nodded and wrote something down. I leaned over to see it. He covered the page. The first box I packed held extension cords. The second held books. I filled it until I could not lift it, removed 6 books, then filled the space with 2 more because the geometry bothered me. By the 5th box, I understood why movers charge money. Darnell came over with a hand truck and no sympathy. "You own 9 hammers," he said from the garage. "They have different purposes. Name 4. Claw, ball peen, rubber mallet, dead blow. That's 4. What are the other 5? Backups. For the coming hammer shortage. I took 2 from him and put them in a donation bin. He dropped a 3rd in after them. I saw that. You were looking right at me. The workbench would not fit in the apartment. I measured twice, even though I had known before extending the tape. Darnell rested his hand on the scarred surface. Ashlyn could use it. Nate thinks it's his. Is it? Not yet. Then ask him what he thinks. I know what he thinks. Darnell raised an eyebrow. I hated when he allowed my own sentences to correct me. I called Nate. He answered on the 2nd ring. "Everything okay? I'm in the garage. That's not a medical condition. The workbench won't fit." Silence. "I thought you might want it," I said. Another silence. Longer. "Do you want me to have it?" "I'm asking if you want it." "That's different." "Yes." I sat on the stool beside the bench. Nate exhaled. "I don't have anywhere to put it." "What about Ben's?" "Ben considers a 2nd coffee mug excessive." "Did you take the Cleveland job?" "No. Why?" Laurel was right. I applied because it gave me a reason to leave before I had to know what I was leaving. "That sounds expensive." "It was a good job." I meant the realization. He laughed softly. "I rented a furnished place for 3 months," he said, "closer to work." "You could have told me. I just did. Before now." I wasn't sure how. "You call, you say, 'I rented a place.' Thanks, I'll use that next time." I ran my hand along the edge of the workbench. Near the vise was a crescent-shaped dent from the time Nate missed a nail and struck the wood with my framing hammer. He had been old enough to know better and young enough to blame the hammer. "Ashlyn needs a bench," I said. "Give it to them." "You're sure?" "No. But I don't need you storing my future in your new apartment." That sounded like something Laurel might have said, or Priya, maybe even Darnell. It did not sound like the Nate who had written his name on the toolboxes. "I'll save you a few things," I said. "Save what you think I'll use. I thought you disliked quiet verdicts. I'm asking for one." After we hung up, Darnell helped me load the bench into his truck. It took both of us, a furniture dolly, and language Rosa later described as incompatible with a community supper room. Celia came on Saturday to sort photographs. She carried 3 accordion folders, a pack of labels, 2 archival pens, and a scanner. I asked for help choosing photographs, I said. "This is how photographs are chosen. This is how evidence is processed." She set everything on the dining room table. "I have categories. No categories yet. Dad, sit down first." We are sitting. without organizing. Her fingers rested on the label package. Slowly, she pushed it away. I brought coffee. We sat across from each other with a cardboard box of photographs between us. I took out the lake picture, the one that had caught Nate and Celia squinting into the sun in their 20s. Nate wore a yellow t-shirt. Celia's hair blew across her mouth, and she was trying not to laugh. "That trip was awful," she said. "It rained one afternoon. It rained 4 days. You met Priya there. I met Priya at work. You first saw her at the marina. That was a different woman." I looked closer at the tiny figure in the background. "Keep that away from Priya," Celia said. "We made 3 piles, mine, Joanne's, and copies." Celia tried to create a 4th for uncertain pictures. I made her choose. After an hour, she held a photograph of me, standing on the porch after my shoulder surgery. My arm was in a sling. Nate held a drill. Celia stood beside me with a foil-covered casserole. "You called me every morning for 3 months," I said. "The surgeon said you shouldn't drive for 3 weeks. You couldn't button your shirt for 10 days. You said it hurt. It did. Then why are we arguing?" "Because I didn't tell you when it stopped." Celia lowered the photograph. "I kept calling," she said. "I let you. You complained. I liked that you called." Her expression changed. There it was, the sentence I had avoided because it sounded smaller than the behavior it explained. "I knew how to fill out the insurance form," I said. She did not move. "I didn't like the website," I continued. "But I knew how. I left it on the table because I knew you'd see it Sunday." "Why?" "Because you'd sit beside me. You'd complain, and I'd complain about you complaining, and we'd spend 20 minutes together. You could have asked me to stay. Yes, you made me think you couldn't do it. I made it easier for you to believe that." Celia looked down at the photograph. "I liked believing it," she said. "I know. If you needed me for practical things, I didn't have to wonder whether you actually wanted me around. I did want you around. You had a strange way of showing it. So did you." She smiled without humor. We sat among 40 years of faces and admitted that care had become the safest disguise for wanting. "I'm sorry," I said. Celia rubbed one thumb along the photograph's white border. "I'm sorry, too." Neither apology fixed the hours we had spent resenting favors we had not discussed. They did make the room quieter. When she left, she took one folder of pictures to scan and asked before taking the pen. The last Sunday dinner in the old house arrived with boxes lining the hallway. They were labeled in my handwriting: kitchen, apartment, books, den, donate, Ashland. One box sat beside Nate's chair. Another sat beside Celia's. Neither had a destination written on it. Celia arrived with Priya, a bottle of wine, and no labels. Nate came alone. He had shaved and wore the blue-striped shirt he once left in the guest closet. Laurel had returned it with 2 other shirts after he moved into the furnished apartment. "Is she coming?" I asked. "No. Did you invite her?" "Yes." "What did she say?" "She said this is your family dinner. You're her family. She said that's one of the things we're trying to figure out." He said it without blame, which made it sound more serious. We sat down. I served pot roast, carrots, potatoes, and gravy. The meal had not changed. Everything around it had. Nate looked at the box beside his chair. Should I be worried? It's a selection. Celia opened hers first. Inside was the lake photograph, the small brass lamp she had borrowed for the basement room, a set of Joanne's handwritten recipe cards, and the birdhouse she had built without an entrance. "Oh my God," she said. "You kept this? It's been in the garage. It has no hole." "I know. It's useless. It reminds me of you." Priya turned away to hide a laugh. Celia held up the birdhouse. "I'm trying to decide whether that was affectionate. It has excellent structure." She set it carefully on the floor. Nate's box held the framing hammer, 2 socket sets, the yellow tape measure, his blue shirt from the guest room, and a photograph of us at the workbench. He picked up the hammer. "You gave the bench away. To Ashland. You gave me the dent. You made the dent." He ran his thumb over the photograph. "Thank you," he said. It was the first uncomplicated thing he had said to me in weeks. We ate. Halfway through dinner, Celia reached for the gravy and stopped. "May I?" "It's gravy. I'm practicing." "Yes." Priya poured wine. Nate ate 3 carrots as always. After dessert, nobody hurried to leave. The boxes remained in the hallway. The keys were stored in a drawer now, no longer displayed on a saucer. The calendar beside the refrigerator showed the moving date in my handwriting. I looked at my children across the table. You planned my move because you thought I couldn't face it, I said. Celia's hand tightened around her glass. I did face it, I continued. You were right that this house was becoming too much. You were wrong to believe that made my life yours to arrange. I know, she said. Nate looked down. I'm sorry. He did not add that he had been scared, desperate, or misled. He let the apology stand without asking it to defend him. I nodded. I also need to say something, I told them. I made Sunday dinner into a test none of you knew you were taking. I helped, then kept score. I acted helpless when I was lonely, because needing you felt safer than asking whether you wanted to come. Priya watched Celia. Nate turned the framing hammer in his hands. I did want to come, he said. Sometimes. That's more honest. Sometimes I came because Laurel said I'd hate myself if something happened and I'd skip the last dinner. That's less comforting. You asked for honest. I may revise the policy. Celia laughed, then covered her mouth as tears reached her eyes. I'm scared of the new place, I said. Her hand moved across the table and stopped halfway. She waited. I placed my hand over hers. I'm not asking you to fix that, I said. I know. Good. But can I help tomorrow? With what? The move. I looked at Nate, then Priya. Yes, I said. You can help. Nobody assigned rooms. Nobody opened a calendar. Nobody told me where I would sleep. When they finally left, the house held the smell of gravy and cardboard. I washed the 3 serving dishes, wiped the counters, and left the dining table untouched. 4 glasses stood near 4 chairs, each showing the print of the person who had lifted it. Upstairs, the bedrooms were empty except for my bed. I slept badly. Before dawn, I carried the ceramic rooster down from the refrigerator and wrapped it in the brown blanket. It was the last thing I packed. The movers arrived at 8. Celia arrived at 7:15. She knocked. I opened the door and found her on the porch with coffee, work gloves, and a roll of blue painter's tape held against her chest. I know you said the labels are finished, she said. They are. This is for emergencies. What kind of labeling emergency? I don't know. That's why it would be an emergency. I let her bring it inside. Priya came 15 minutes later, carrying breakfast sandwiches. Nate pulled up at 7:45 in his repaired car. He parked crooked, looked at the angle, and pulled out again to straighten it. Nobody mentioned that I noticed. The moving crew walked through with me while I showed them what went to the apartment, what stayed for the house sale, and what belonged in the donation truck scheduled for the next morning. The supervisor pointed at a box marked Kitchen Apartment. Fragile? It contains dishes. He put a red sticker on it. Celia watched from the dining room, but did not add a second sticker. I had expected moving day to feel ceremonial. Instead, it became a sequence of practical inconveniences. The sofa would not clear the front door until one mover removed the legs. A bookshelf I had measured twice was an inch too tall for the apartment. Because I had forgotten the crown molding, the mattress caught on the upstairs railing. Nate and Priya spent 20 minutes trying to disconnect the garden hose that had fused itself to the outside faucet through rust and stubbornness. At 10, I found Celia standing in the empty guest room. The closet door was open. 4 small pencil marks remained on the inside frame, the dates beside them written in Joanne's hand. We should take this, Celia said. The door frame, a picture. She took out her phone, then paused. May I? Yes. She photographed the marks. Joanne used to make you stand with your heels against the wall, I said. You pushed my hair down. You cheated. I wanted to be taller than Nate. You were for 6 months. They were an important 6 months. She touched the highest mark with one finger. What happens when somebody paints over them? They become paint. She looked at me. That was either very healthy or very cold. I haven't decided. I took my own photograph. Downstairs, Nate carried his box of tools to his car. The yellow tape measure was clipped to his belt again. He stopped in the garage before closing the trunk. You sure about the bench? He asked. It's already installed at Ashland. I know. You can use it there. I'd have to volunteer. That is the trap. He smiled. The garage looked enormous without the workbench. Pale rectangles marked the wall where shelves had been. A single bent nail remained near the window. Nate leaned against the car. Laurel and I are having dinner Thursday, he said. At your place? Restaurant. Neutral territory. She said she isn't ready for territory. That sounds like Laurel. I told her I turned down Cleveland. Because of her? Because I applied for the wrong reason. I told them I'd be interested if something opened here. That was honest. It was expensive. I've heard that. He glanced toward the house. I really did think I was helping you. I know. I also wanted the house. I know that too. I'm not sure which one came first. That's generally why people should ask before hiring movers. He nodded. I'm sorry, Dad. He had already apologized at dinner, but this one belonged to the garage. I put my hand on his shoulder. You can regret something without pretending every part of you was wrong, I said. You needed somewhere to go. I still do. You have an apartment. I mean, somewhere that feels like this. I looked around at the oil stain beneath the spot where my car had been, the hooks on the wall, and the empty space left by the bench. This took 40 years, I said. Give your place more than a week. The moving truck pulled away shortly after noon. My furniture disappeared down the street while I stood in the driveway with Celia, Nate, and Priya. The house behind us was not empty, but it had stopped looking inhabited. Frank had left a stack of showing covers for shoes beside the front door. The rooms would soon belong to strangers who needed help imagining their own things there. Celia looked at her watch. We should follow the truck. I need 5 minutes. We can stay. I know. I want 5 minutes. She started to argue, caught herself, and handed me the coffee she had bought 4 hours earlier. We'll meet you there, she said. They left. I walked through the house alone. In the kitchen, square patches of cleaner paint showed where the table and refrigerator had stood. The refrigerator remained with the house, but the movers had shifted it forward to remove a narrow shelf beside it. Something orange lay against the baseboard, the carrot. It had rolled under there the Sunday I discovered the boxes. 5 weeks had reduced it to a dark, crooked little stick. I picked it up with a paper towel. All that time, I had thought I needed a longer broom. The refrigerator had only needed to move. I threw the carrot away. In the dining room, I ran my hand across the table one last time. The movers had left it because Frank said it helped define the room. It was not the table I wanted in the apartment. Too large, too scratched, too many years of my family sitting in assigned places and pretending the arrangement was natural. I did not say goodbye to the house. Houses do not require emotional performances. Darnell had been right about that. I turned off the lights, locked the front door, and placed the key in the lockbox Frank had attached to the railing. Nobody in my family had a copy. At the apartment, the movers had already placed my bed in the bedroom and my reading chair in the den. Darnell stood in the kitchen assembling a narrow work table on wheels. I didn't ask you to buy that, I said. I didn't. Rosa found it in the supper room storage closet. It's filthy. That's why we gave it to you. Rosa leaned through the courtyard window from outside. I can hear you. The wheels lock? I asked. Darnell pressed one with his shoe. 3 of them. Then it has aspirations. Celia was opening kitchen boxes. She held a plate over the cabinet and looked at me. Here? I considered the shelf. Higher. She moved it. Is this going to happen with every plate? Nate asked. Yes, Celia and I said together. Priya unwrapped the ceramic rooster from the brown blanket. This survived, she said, against all advice. The rooster went on top of the refrigerator. Its feet were still too large. By 6, the bed had sheets, the shower had towels, and the kitchen cabinets contained enough dishes for 6 people. The rest of the boxes formed a wall along the den. My bookshelf stood beneath the crown molding, after Darnell removed its decorative top with a handsaw. Celia ordered pizza. We ate in the courtyard because my new table would not arrive until Tuesday. Rosa joined us with 2 cans of soda and the authority of a person who considered the courtyard an extension of her apartment. No one called it Sunday dinner. It was Monday, for one thing. When Celia and Priya left, Celia stopped at the door. Call when you wake up, she said. I wake up early. Then text. Why? So I know you survived the oatmeal cabinets. I looked at her. She took a breath. Would you like me to call you tomorrow? Yes, I said, at 9. Her face softened. Okay. Nate left last. He stood in the hallway with his hands in his pockets. You want me to take the trash down? Yes. He looked surprised. I can ask for help, I said. Let's not make a parade. He picked up both bags. At the building door, he turned. Do you need anything else? Not tonight. Should I call? Thursday. Tell me how dinner goes. He nodded. Then he left without looking for a place to put a key. The first night in the apartment, the bakery delivery woke me at 5:12. Metal racks rolled across the pavement. A truck reversed 3 times. Somebody shouted, "Other door," with the conviction of a man who had been shouting it for years. At 5:30, the smell of bread came through my window. I made coffee and stood in the patch of morning light Priya had liked. The apartment felt small enough to hear itself. The refrigerator clicked. Pipes moved inside the wall. Rosa crossed the courtyard in slippers and waved at me without stopping. I did not feel brave. I felt displaced, tired, and painfully aware that half my belongings were inside boxes I had labeled myself. I also knew where every box was going. That week, I learned the bakery discounted yesterday's bread after 4. I learned the shower took 20 seconds to warm. I learned the man in the red sweater was named Mr. Alvarez, and disliked people who interrupted him while he read, which gave us an immediate basis for friendship. I walked to Ashland 3 times. The workbench looked better in the supper room than it had in my garage. Its dents belonged among the mismatched cabinets and repaired walls. Nate came on Saturday to help Darnell install a shelf above it. He used the framing hammer I had given him. Nobody told him how to hold it. Celia called at 9 on Tuesday, not 8:58. She asked how I slept. She did not ask whether I had taken medication, locked the door, eaten breakfast, or tested the smoke detector. I told her the oatmeal cabinets looked worse in afternoon light. "That sounds serious," she said. "I may need your opinion on paint." She was silent for a second. "Are you asking me to choose? I'm asking you to bring samples. I'll choose. I can do that." "Saturday. What time?" "Surprise me." "Dad." 10. Nate's dinner with Laurel lasted 2 hours. "That seems promising," I told him Thursday night. She cried. "That seems less promising." I cried. "I'll revise the estimate." They were not getting back together. They were also not ending the marriage that night. Laurel agreed to meet him for coffee the following week. Nate had finally told her about the furnished apartment without presenting it as temporary housing until somebody changed her mind. "Do you like the place?" I asked. "No." "Good. Why is that good?" "You may have chosen it for the right reason." He laughed. The house received an offer after 3 weeks. Frank called while I was helping Rosa plan a Sunday menu. I accepted after one ordinary round of discussion. Nate did not ask who the buyers were. Celia asked whether I felt all right, then waited for the answer. "I will," I said. The first Sunday dinner in the apartment was my idea. I called everyone separately. Celia asked what she could bring. Nothing. "Plates? I own plates. Wine? Priya can bring wine. What should I do?" "Come at 5. Nate asked if Laurel was invited. I invited her. "What did she say?" "She said yes." "She didn't tell me." "That may be because you are arriving separately." Darnell offered rolls. "Bought or burned?" I asked. "Bought. I don't trust you." At 4:55, Darnell arrived with a paper bag from the bakery. At 5, Priya knocked carrying wine. Celia stood behind her with one folded chair. I said nothing. I told her, "The table has 5 chairs. It has 6. 1 is your desk chair. It's still a chair." "She asked before bringing it," Priya said. I let the folding chair in. Nate arrived at 5:10. Laurel came at 5:15 in her own car. They greeted each other beside the oatmeal cabinets with the careful warmth of people learning that hope and permission were different things. The table barely fit us. Darnell's knees hit mine. Celia had to stand whenever Laurel needed to leave her chair. Priya passed the gravy in the wrong direction and made no effort to correct it. Nate ate 3 carrots. Nobody sat in an old place because there were no old places. After dinner, Laurel and Priya washed dishes. I let them. Darnell dried. Celia stayed at the table with Nate, arguing quietly about whether the ceramic rooster was a chicken. "It has a comb," Nate said. "It has enormous feet. Those facts can coexist." I carried coffee to the table. "Next Sunday?" Celia asked. The room went quiet. For 12 years, the answer had been assumed. I looked around at the 6 adults pressed together in a room that required effort from all of us. "Not here," I said. Celia's expression fell. "Your place," I told her, "if you want." "I do." "No timer." I threw it away. Nate raised his hand. "What?" I asked. "Week after that, I can host." "In the furnished apartment you dislike? It has a table. How many chairs?" 2. Darnell said. I know somebody with a folding chair. Celia pointed at hers. Ask first. Nate looked at me. You coming? He asked. It was not an obligation. It was not a promise hidden inside a joke. It was an invitation. Yes, I said. Later, after everyone left, I found 6 plates in the dishwasher and no untouched meal waiting in the refrigerator. Darnell had taken the extra rolls. Celia had left her folding chair with permission. Nate and Laurel had walked to their separate cars without asking anyone to decide what happened next. The apartment was quiet, not the accusing quiet of the old dining room, not the locked quiet I had demanded after taking back the keys, just the sound of a smaller life with room still being made inside it. I turned off the kitchen light. Above the refrigerator, the rooster stood exactly where I had chosen to put it,